Hello, everybody. We are back with the penultimate Rook Club for the moment with the second last story of Tevinter Nights. And I am joined with a lovely crew today. We have joining us Songbird. Say hi, Songbird.
Songbird has
Hear
left
me?
the chat.
Songbird
Oh
has left.
no.
Hello. We have
Coming out.
we have Nooble.
Sorry.
That's okay. Nooble now with an aubergine emoji.
Yes, hello, hello.
Look, I love that.
We have LB.
Hi.
We have Fairy Wing.
Hello.
And we have Tiny.
Hello.
Hello. How are we all doing? The fact that the Veilguard is 15 days away.
I want to scream, but
I'm dying.
everybody will be dead.
Coming so fast.
It is so close. We don't have long, and I don't know about you guys. I mean, sometimes the days are flying, but it's like the days are quick, but the weeks are so long. But like,
Slow
Yes.
at the same time.
it does feel slow at the moment, and we're so close. And I
But
know
we're
it's
always.
Go on,
Sorry,
Tiny.
go ahead.
Go on, Tiny.
We're already like halfway through the week, so
It's true, exactly, and it's Rook Club already. And
yeah.
the thing
Yeah.
is, I know there's been a few leaks lately. Like there's been achievements leaked online. I haven't looked at any of them, but it's like we're so
Oh, I
close
heard
to
that.
avoiding spoilers, but we're so close to actually being at that point where we get to experience it ourselves. We just have 2 weeks tomorrow until we get to play.
Wow.
Oh my god.
Same,
so
I still can't believe it.
I know.
Although I don't think it was like it got like leaked per se.
It wasn't leaked. It was just put on the Xbox store.
Yeah,
But there's
because it was
secret
the preload
achievements,
thing.
and you have to then look behind the secret. So it is spoilery because you're looking behind the secret. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
but I don't think it was like an
Mm.
intentional leak because
No,
just because
no.
it was the preload thing. So
Yeah, it's just something
And
like
then, it is
Barbara
annoying
or
when
whatever
people
does.
post on it though.
Oh, sorry.
And then those of us on PC don't even get a preload.
Yeah, let's
Oh,
talk
I
about
know,
that.
I'm so
Yeah.
bummed.
So Xbox gets they can preload today, I believe. Then PlayStation's
Yeah.
coming up soon, and then PC no preload.
No.
no,
Take
but
it
that's
away.
understandable because of data mining and stuff.
Yeah, and they can.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
It's
still
not-
hurts though.
It
My-
does.
Yeah.
it's faster stuff shit, so it should be okay. Although
Yeah.
it did take me 10 hours to download BG3 because there were
Oh,
so
yeah?
many people downloading it.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Day one download. That's the real
Oh.
nightmare on Halloween is the day one download, and then if there's any patches as
Everybody.
well.
Mhm.
Truly scary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for me, it's coming out 5 p.m. or 4 p.m. UK time. It's like, what am I gonna do that entire day?
Yeah. I thought it was 6 p.m. my time.
It's 4 p.m.
Yeah.
GMT.
It's 11 a.m. my time.
9 a.m. my time. I
I'm just
believe.
1 hour after check. I'll
mean,
be fine. Just
I'm
pacing
off
back
today
and forth
anyway,
all
so
day.
I will be pacing my room.
Yeah.
I don't even remember when it's supposed to come out in my time.
Either way,
I
we're
mean, I
getting on
sleep until
Halloween.
noon and it's probably going to be out by then.
Yeah. No, you'll be good. You'll be good. But regardless, it's been a 10-year wait. Like, we have to wait 15 days now. It's insane. We just
It
gotta.
still doesn't feel real.
We just gotta survive. 1 p.m. For you, happy thoughts. 5 p.m. for Dharma. I'm pretty sure it's 4 p.m. GMT. I haven't looked at it since the other day. But yeah, no, we're so close. Jack, I'm going to do sewing and embroidery on Halloween because it calms me down. Perfect for waiting until 4 p.m. That is a brilliant idea, iCity Cat. That is a brilliant idea.
I
Yeah,
will probably.
I don't know what I'm going
get
to do.
dressed for Halloween
On-
in like Vaseline or something.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
to grab me.
Yeah.
yeah. Get
Oh, that's
dressed up.
such a fun idea.
Yeah. I don't know if chat knows, but I was thinking about what if I, on the 31st, went to get the game physically, and then would it actually let me play it physically, bearing in mind it gets released at 4 p.m. Is the game going to, pardon me, is it going to pause, or is it going to be some kind of placeholder of like you can't play the game even though you've bought it physically? Like, how does that, probably won't work, will it? It's not like it used to be where like you could go to a midnight launch or you could play a game early if it arrived in the mail earlier. Like, could you get away with doing that?
I
Maybe
don't
it'll
know,
work,
but because
but
it's supposed to
if
be
you
fully
create your rook-
offline.
Yeah, maybe it'll work.
Yeah.
And when you create your rook, it'll just have clown makeup on until 5 p.m.
Oh, that'll be amazing.
That would be amazing.
Like, not for you, Jack. No, you can wait.
It's like clowning.
You
'cause
in
you thought you
particular,
could
Jack.
play it
Just
earlier.
you.
I mean, that would be me recreating literally my Inquisitor. If I'm doing a self-insert, you know.
It's perfect.
Does anybody know what sort of rook they're going to go for?
I know I'm
yeah.
gonna be an
Yes.
elf. That's it.
Elf? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I'm gonna be romancing Emmerich. 'cause
Yes, as you
after
should.
that Thousand Vengeance episode, I was
Oh
like,
my god.
As you
I
should.
knew who I'm romancing.
Yes.
I
was-
thought I was sure, but every Thousand
Yeah.
Vengeance episode that aired made me doubt more and more and more. So now I have no idea.
It was very dependent on because I really liked Bellara, so I was like, oh, I'm
Yes.
probably gonna
No, I
romance her.
get
And I'm
it.
like, okay,
I
I'm gonna
get it.
wait until Emmerich's episode
Yeah.
because like
Yeah.
ever since they were
I
like,
love
oh
his
yeah,
voice.
he's this sensual, like older gentleman necromancer, I was like, I'm sold.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need to
Yeah.
I need to listen to how he sounds and like what his mannerisms are a little bit. So
Yeah.
when Thousand Vengeance came along, I was like, nope, never
Yeah,
mind.
that's
Okay,
it. Yep,
Emmerich it
that's
is.
it. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Had a list of like
Got
the
listed right
order.
off my list.
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm definitely going to be an elf, and I haven't decided between Lucanus or Emmerich for the first playthrough
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
I'm torn. They're like neck and neck.
Neck and neck, yeah. No, I'm
Elf
torn.
mage.
I'm torn. Elf mage? Yeah? What sort of mage do you
Yep.
know?
Oh yes, definitely.
So I'm kind of leaning towards Spellblade.
Nice.
Moment, we'll see how the mechanics work. But I'm like jumping back and forth between a Veil Ranger, or not a Veil Ranger, a Veil
Jumper.
Jumper,
Yeah,
a Lord of Fortune, and a Crow. I'm torn.
Ooh.
Ugh,
Yeah.
torn.
Also
Yeah.
cool.
Torn like Natalie Imbruglia, how do you say her surname?
Yeah.
I City Catty in the chat because you said that you need to now give me like 5 clown emojis. I said I'm so happy that the clowning emoji is not so relevant anymore. No, make it relevant again. No, I'm joking. We will
It's
clown.
still relevant.
We will clown for the Veilguard to be Game of the Year if it deserves it. But we'll be
We-
clowning for it to be
And
Game
we
of the
still
Year.
don't know if Lavelle and Ed Solus get their happy ending, so I'm still
don't.
clowning.
And we're clowning for DLC too afterwards.
Oh,
Obviously
yes.
after
Yeah.
playing the
Mhm.
base package of the game. But yeah, ICT, I demand 5 clowning emojis from you. I refuse! No!
You gotta do it, come on.
Peer pressure. Place the
There you
clown.
go, I'll do it.
Release the clown.
Release.
There you go,
Release.
you're welcome.
Loud.
Come on, ICT cat, you can do it. Release the clown.
Join
For me.
us with the clowning.
For the second last episode of Rook Club, do it. We will not start iCity until you give me a clown emoji.
I did do clown makeup like last time what was it on the Xbox game show or whatever? I
Yes,
streamed
the
it and
Xbox
it was
show,
like a
yes.
big I just was like while watching the show I was just like applying clown makeup.
iCity, we're
That's
waiting for you.
appropriate.
We're waiting for you. I don't want wolf
Do it.
emojis. I don't want wolf
Join us.
emojis.
I love the little wolf emojis and the clown emojis.
It's that tick, that meme.
Yeah.
Well, where we? Yay! We got it. We got it. We got it.
There
Thank
we
you,
We
go.
got
iCity.
it. Thank you.
Round of applause for iCity. Thank you, iCity. DeCaster did say about
You're the best,
the
Kathy.
DeCaster did say about the physical disc thing. She said, yeah, that you won't be able to actually start it until after 4 p.m. even with a physical copy. So
Yeah.
I'm literally going to be idling about.
Which
Oh,
is
boy.
weird because it's supposed to be fully offline. So if you have a
Yeah.
physical copy of it and you like turn off your internet, you should be able to play it, right?
Maybe
Maybe it can
that's-
detect like your local time on your computer.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Like Nintendo games.
I just set it ahead.
Yeah, they set it in their head and they're like, haha,
Yeah.
fuck off.
Maybe, I mean, I'll cross that bridge when it comes. I literally, I'll be going insane. It'll be Halloween, it'll be
Trick
4
the
p.m.
system.
I don't know what to, it'll be insane.
I think I'm gonna reread The Missing.
Try
just all
go
the-
trick or
Yeah,
treating
that's a good
until then.
Dharma says that we're going to defeat the Evanurus with an army of clowns. I agree.
Yes.
Yes.
Speaking of which, let's now jump into Rook Club. Thank you to iCity for giving us that clown emoji. We can do what we're here to do. So we are joined for our second
We
last
would not
story
start it
today.
without it.
And we're jumping straight into, I believe, Tevinter's capital city of Manrathis with a with a good, fun, I would say, heist-themed story. And is going to open up, it opens up quite a few plot points for the Veilguard, certainly involving the Cunari, Solas, and Tevinter. We will jump straight into this one as we delve into a good old heist narrative with an underlying different kind of new story thread. We'll jump straight into this one. So, if everybody has their tea or a beverage of their choice for Rook Club, for listening to our book read, or whatever chills you out or relaxes you as we delve into this second last story of Tevinter Nights. With that, let us jump straight in. So we have half up front, written by John Epler, the good old creative designer of the Veilguard, or creative director, I should say. So, let's jump in. It was the kind of place you went to be invisible. Perfect for the sort of business I was there to conduct. It was also about the only place I could go as an altus, even a formal one, and drink without worrying about poison in the whiskey or a dagger in the ribs. No signs advertised the bar's existence. No barkers stood outside. No stylized ale casks hanging in front gave any hint as to its true purpose. A nondescript door in a nondescript wall in a nondescript quarter of Manrathis. It wasn't the kind of place you stumbled across. Either you knew about it and you were there and were there, or you didn't and weren't. Through the door, a narrow hallway and a set of stairs leading underground. A second door, propped open by a large piece of driftwood, opened into a large, low-ceilinged space. The walls were rough-hewn stone, the ceiling crisscrossed by smoke-stained wooden beams. Inside, a handful of mismatched tables scattered against the walls. One chair, the seat pulled from a wagon. Another, the broken pews from an Andrastian chantry. Large rugs kept the floor warm. And in the middle of the room, a single magical animated piano, someone's vain attempt at injecting a little additional class into the space, plinking away a sad little tune, off-key and discordant. There was no bartender, or at least none that you ever saw. There was a large shelf, though, with two small doors and a basket. You put your coin in the basket and it slid through one door, and almost immediately your drink came out on the other side. No change, you paid the price to the copper. That seemed to be how it knew what to serve you. It was a sort of casual use of magic you got used to, living in Tevinter, but I still thought it was pretty impressive. The drinks shared the same haphazard air as the seating, coming in all variety of glasses, mugs, and alchemical equipment. The clientele was similarly eclectic. Nobles and magisters, sharing tables and conversation with commoners, mercenaries. The low murmur was muted, dissonant. I sipped my whiskey, my third of the night, and brushed a stray lock of long brown hair out of my eyes. I hated winter. The clothes were bulky and uncomfortable, and the dry air made a mess of my hair. But the warmth of the alcohol filled my belly, taking away the bitter edge of cold that had snuck in from outside. It snowed, but only lightly. Still, my least favourite time of year. Across from me sat the woman I'd come there to meet. She was dressed in a bulky, shape-obscuring robe and a thick winter hat that never left her head, and she didn't drink. Or rather, she was drinking water, sipping it disdainfully. I'd taken an immediate dislike to her, but she'd offered me twice my usual fee, so I'd listen, hear her out, decide where to go from there. She hadn't given me a name. I hadn't asked for one. That was how things worked. No names, only a place, a reason to be there, and half up front. We sat in silence for another minute, before she gingerly placed her glass on the table and leaned forward, steepling her fingers.
You come highly recommended, Magister Vadis. Your reputation precedes you.
I scowled.
Former Altus Vadis.
I spoke each word slowly, deliberately. Altus, not Magister. I'd never been a Magister. My father filled the seat for our family, and I'd left the nobility behind. So even Altus was past tense.
My one rule is no name. You don't know a damned thing about me.
She arched an eyebrow.
Grace, daughter of Magister Marino Vadis, lover of an elven servant.
Former servant.
I corrected her. A little more harshly than I'd intended. It was an important point. My romantic relationship with Irene Cestus. I think that was right. Yeah, Irene. Irian? What did we say?
Irian.
Tyrion.
The struggle is real.
Irian Cestus. Not Irene Cestus. Who's Irene Cestus? We don't know her. Irian Cestus had started after she'd left my family's employ. Would have been weird, otherwise, and a little too Tevinter on my part to ignore the class dynamics in play.
Well, former servant. Your family saw scandal, gave you a choice. You chose her. I find that commendable personally. But your father did not. So now, you work as a thief.
She leaned forward.
I would never dream of revealing your identity. But I think it's important that you know that my resources are vast.
I glowed. I tried hard to keep my two lives separate. My father and I were no longer on speaking terms. But even so, an Altus, even a former one who moonlit as a master thief, was the sort of thing that you didn't want to get out. I didn't like the idea of this asshole. Sorry, I'm not used to asshole. I didn't like the idea of this asshole knowing so much about me. To hell with her. I drained my drink in a single swallow and put the empty glass on the table. I stood.
One thing you should know about me. I don't take kindly to intimidation. We're done here.
I started to walk away.
Intimidation was hardly my goal. I merely wanted to give you an idea of the information at my fingertips. However, I still find myself needing your help.
She gestured at my seat.
Please, hear me out. I'll pay half your fee just for listening.
I glowed at her, but half my fee to have a conversation was tempting. I still had some savings, but by and large, my assets were less liquid than I preferred, except for those that were more liquid, like the 30-year-old Ferelden whiskey in front of me. And I'd burn before I asked my father for help. Besides, it wasn't like I had anything better to do. I sat back down. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a large piece of parchment tied with waxed string. She slid it across the table. I unrolled it and examined it. It was a rubbing of some sort, covered in runes. Old, really, really old. Before Tevinter existed, old. Nothing I recognized, which wasn't a surprise. Ancient law wasn't exactly my area of expertise. I made a note to ask Irian, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
Irian, I made a note. All right, I'm going to write that down.
Did you not write it down before?
I did, but I wrote it on a different. I wrote it on my personal Discord server. Irian, I made a note to ask Irian about it. I looked up. She gazed at me expectantly.
You are Andrastian, yes? A member of the Chantry in good standing?
Feels like you already know the answer to that question.
I snarled, a little more forcefully than I'd intended.
Indulge me, please.
Yes, I'm a dues paying, maker fearing, old gods denying chantry member. Good standing is another thing.
She shrugged.
But you don't believe. Not truly.
I hesitated. It was a complicated question, and one I didn't particularly feel like getting into with this client. I had the feeling, though, that she wouldn't be satisfied with anything but the complete truth.
I guess I have some thoughts about the incompatible idea of a benevolent maker and all the awful shit that happens here. Yeah.
She nodded.
You know the significance of Dumont's folly.
She gestured at the rubbing I held in front of me. So that's what it was.
Supposed to be a piece of the Black City itself. A reminder of man's hubris and the unique and glorious divinity of the Maker.
I snorted.
Seems like a bunch of nug shit to me.
Regardless, the artifact has been stolen. By who, I do not know. For what purpose, I do not know. But I would like you to find the answer to both questions. And for that, I will pay you triple your usual rate.
Well now, that wasn't expected. Dumat's folly was kept in the Archon's palace. It was deceptively well guarded. Magical traps, around-the-clock armed guards. Easy enough to get in, but getting out was another story. One hell of a place to rob. I'd done a job there once, and it was the reason my left knee ached when it was cold. My professional curiosity was piqued. Still, this wasn't something I wanted to get tangled up in. The Chantry was dangerous, powerful, and pissing off the Archon seemed like a good way to find yourself chained up in some slave ship or another. A one-way ticket to parts unknown. I shook my head.
Look, you want something stolen, I'm your woman. But this, it's the Chantry shit. Talk to one of the Templars, or the Justiciar.
There are aspects of the theft that suggest that they may have had help from within. No, I cannot trust the Chantry or any of its agents, and it must be done in secret. No one can know of your efforts.
I shrugged.
Then find a private investigator. I hear Nev Gallus is good, and she takes appointments.
I do not require an investigator. I need a thief. And I had heard that you are the best, or close enough.
I didn't react to the flattery, and knew I was good.
If you're trying to figure out where that thing went, I'm not going to be much help.
You misunderstand me. Finding out what happened to the artifact is only one part of the job. I also want you to steal it back.
So that was the game then. And it explained why she didn't want to go to the Chantry directly. Bored, rich magisters fighting over artifacts that they'd lock away in some vault after they got them. Status symbols and nothing more.
You have unique talents.
She added.
There are many thieves in Tevinter. There are very few who are also mages.
Why a mage?
I was curious, despite myself.
Forgeries abound.
She slid a small, wrapped package across the table. I opened it, picked it up. The edges were sharper than they looked, and I sliced my finger. I scowled and stuck the finger in my mouth. Wordlessly, she offered me a cloth, and I used it to wipe the blood away, before stuffing it in my pocket. Never a good idea to let someone else get a hold of your blood. Lots of nasty things that they could do with it.
A rune? What am I supposed to do with this?
It is part of the artifact. Separated from it long ago. It has resonance with the whole, and it will allow you to discern whether what you hold is the real Dumat's folly. Touch it to the artifact when you find it. Channel energy between the two, and you will know if it's real.
I leaned back and sighed. I didn't like stealing religious artifacts. Not even if I was just stealing it back. Too much baggage, and it meant getting involved in people's faith. But hell, professional pride was worth something. Something had gotten in and out. Someone had gotten in and out, with one of the Chantry's most valuable artifacts to boot. And again, it wasn't as if Irian.
Irian.
First one was good.
It wasn't as if Irian and I were swimming in coin.
Fine. But I have a couple of conditions. 1.
I held up a finger.
I do it my way. No bullshit from you. 2.
A second finger.
If I find out you're playing me, this turns out to be some kind of setup, we're going to have more than words. 3. I reserve the right to call off this at any time. Things start to feel weird, I'm out.
She nodded.
Clear?
Oh, she nodded.
Of course.
She tossed me a small pouch she'd produced from somewhere. I opened it and blinked. It was stuffed with gold coins, more than she'd promised, and a lot more than the half up front I always asked for.
So, do we have a deal?
That was it, really. Despite my posturing, I needed the money. More accurately, we needed the money. Minrafis was expensive, and Irian and I hadn't found honest employment easy to come by. Being blacklisted by a magister, especially one as petty as my father, tended to do that. The client had me over a barrel. Saying no to this job wasn't an option. At least, not a realistic one. I sighed.
Deal.
Again.
We stepped back, wooden staves held loosely. The room was big, a dining room for 24 servants. The tables and chairs were shoved haphazardly to the side, and where they'd sat were weapon racks filled with training equipment. Wooden swords, blunted arrows, and various protective equipment. In the middle, where we were stood, was a large circle, marked on the ground in chalk. Across from me, Irian Cestus, elven hunter and staff fighting expert, waited. Her pose relaxed, but always ready. She seemed only moments away from springing into action. She sweated, lightly, and still looked almost perfect. I was soaked, and knew that the workout had me looking particularly filthy. My hair was tied back from my face with a leather strap, but it still kept falling limply into my eyes. I assumed the combat pose she'd spent the last 3 hours trying to teach me. Knees slightly bent, staff held perpendicular to my body. Every muscle was sore, tired, but I kept at it. Bowing to each other, I started the pattern. Swing, swing, duck, swing. She caught each blow on her own staff, her movements effortless, bored. She sighed.
No, not like that. Like this.
The swing came unexpectedly, and I raised to block too slowly. It hit me just under the elbow, sending a jolt of pain up my arm, and my own staff clattered woodenly to the ground. Turning slightly, she reversed the direction of her swing, sweeping my legs out from under me and sending me tumbling. The point of her staff pushed under my chin, right at my throat. I grabbed it with both hands, twisting, and she lost her own balance, falling to the ground. I rolled and pinned her arms to the ground, smiling triumphantly, right until her elbow caught me under the ribs and the breath woofed out of me. She got to her feet slowly, gingerly, and reached out her hand to help me up. I waved off the assistants, slowly straightening, and gave her a panned smile to show her that there was no hard feelings, just bruises.
I think it's time to take a break.
She tossed her staff to the side and stretched. I got up and walked to the small table. I poured 2 glasses of water, offering one to Irian. It was our rule. Whoever lost in practice took care of drinks. It had been 207 days since she'd needed to do so. Not that I was keeping track. She took it with a silent nod of thanks. I drained my own and poured a second one, pressed the cool glass to my forehead. She sipped from her glass, slowly, watching me, her look equal parts affection and consternation. We'd known each other for years. She'd worked for my family as a servant, and we'd started to get close. But being from different classes had its own problems, no matter what. It would always cast a shadow over our relationship, so I'd found her a job somewhere else, a high-ranking post within the magisterium, and we'd become more than friends. My father had been furious, more at losing her skills, I think, than at me, but still. So I'd been given a choice, not a hard one, as it turned out, but my father had taken it personally, cut me off. I was fine with it. It was part of what made my relationship with Irian work. Neither of us really gave a damn about what people thought. And it helped that she was an excellent combat instructor. As a mage, you already spend most of your time carrying around a big, heavy piece of wood. Might as well learn the best way to hit people with it. I poured myself another glass, drinking this one slowly, conscious of her eyes on me.
Something on your mind?
She asked, her tone casual. I shook my head, started to deny, and then sighed, nodded. She knew me, could see through my bullshit. Anything other than the truth was going to lead to an argument.
Just a client.
The one who was going to pay double?
She asked, sitting down beside me. She started to rub my shoulders, gentle at first, and then harder. I groaned. I was tense. Little bit from the training, little bit from the elf.
Yeah. Hold on, sorry, I lost my spot. Yeah, except she made it triple. Kind of an asshole. Could tell she thinks she's smarter than everyone else.
She gave me a look and snorted. I ignored it. Professionally.
Anyways, she wants something stolen. Well, sort of. Stolen back.
What is it that she wants?
She asked, her fingers continuing to knead the tension out of my shoulders.
That feels great.
She smiled.
Glad you like it. What was it she wanted you to steal back?
She repeated.
Dumont's Folly.
The massage stopped. I opened my eyes and turned to look at her. Surprise was evident on her features. She ran a hand through her thick black hair, brushing a few damp strands out of her eyes, and shook her head.
But they keep that... it's in the Archon's palace. Remember the Pava's job?
Every time it's cold.
How did they manage that?
She mused, her interest clearly piqued.
And why hasn't... why steal that? It has no power. It doesn't do anything.
I shrugged, my aching muscles protesting every movement of the gesture. I gave her a pointed look and nodded at her, hinting. She ignored it.
Turn it down. Last time you did a job there, you almost died.
I shrugged.
I twisted my knee. That's a pretty long way from almost dying.
It could have been a lot worse, and you know it.
It's a lot of money. Enough to finally, permanently cut ties with my father. Enough to have our own life.
That's not it.
I narrowed my eyes.
Oh yeah? What's it about then?
I made no attempt to hide the heat in my voice. She looked at me levelly.
Pride. That Pava's job. The Archon's Palace beat you, and now you want a chance to try again. Make up for your mistakes, because you can't stand not being the best.
Like hell. This is about the money, nothing else. 3 times my fee is a whole lot. Unless you found some other form of gainful employment, this is how we keep from getting kicked out into the streets. And it's damned cold out there.
If it's only about the money, then why aren't you an Altus? That kind of power, they pay you just for showing up. Why'd you get yourself kicked out and become a thief?
You know.
No, it's you. Sorry.
You know damn well why. For you? Because I disgraced my family by taking up with an elf, an employee.
She shook her head.
That's part of it, certainly. But not all of it. It's because you were never the best. Because being average has never been good enough for you. Like your father.
She paused, her eyes widening as she realized what she'd said. She'd crossed a line. I leapt to my feet, started to speak, started to shout, and instead turned away and walked out, into the study across the hallway. I fumed, white-hot anger filling my veins with fire. What business was it of hers? What gave her the right to speak of me like that? I knew the answer, of course. It was because she was right. Second place is the first loser. My father always told me. He was a cruel man, well suited for life in the Empire, and I hated him. But he wasn't wrong. I had to be the best. Irian walked into the room. Her expression was regretful, and she held 2 glasses. Not water, but whiskey. I took one from her, but held it. Not drinking, she sipped the other one.
Look.
She started, and I held up a hand, forestalling her apology.
Forget it.
I gave her a smile. No hard feelings. She returned it, a little unsure, and I kissed her. We stood like that for a minute before we pulled apart. I sat down heavily in one of the large, mismatched armchairs, my aching knees thanking me.
You're right. But not completely. Pride's part of it, for sure. But the pay's good. Enough to relax for a little while. Maybe go to Orlais. See Valroyo. Go to one of those little countryside estates. Eat all the cheese your heart desires.
I hesitated.
Might even be enough to start over somewhere else. Still. We make this decision together. We're a team.
She sighed, and then leaned in, kissing me gently on the forehead.
You'll never leave Minrathous. You say you hate it, and maybe part of you does, but everything you love is here.
She smiled.
Everyone you love too.
I embraced her, and we held each other closely, my chin resting on the top of her head. I didn't like to admit it, but she was right. I knew the city, knew all the bars that would let you drink on credit, the restaurants that would always make the food just right. It was broken. It was messy. It was home, or at least the closest thing to it. Pardon me. The hug slackened, ended. She stepped back and looked in my eyes. Seeming to come to a decision, she sighed and shook her head.
Fine. We'll do the job. I can't say I like it, but...
She paused and then grinned.
I am holding you to Valrayo.
Ah. The Archon's palace filled the Minrathous skyline, dominated it. It was visible from pretty much anywhere. When you first came to the city, you spent a few weeks admiring it, in awe of it. Eventually, you got used to it, and it became part of the background, like the sun or the clouds. Tourists loved it though. Nobles from Orlais, from Antiva, the only ones who could afford to make the trip. The roadways outside were always crowded, full of people representing the nicer parts of Thedas, and of course, those who preyed on them. Had to admire that local entrepreneurial spirit. Sorry. Had to admire that local entrepreneurial spirit. Our entrance into the palace was a long way from the glittering arches of its front gate. No matter how beautiful the facade, every building needed a servant's entrance, and we sat on the rooftops opposite. Much less glamorous, you could smell the stench of the sewers here, and there was little attention paid to the appearances. The contrasts of Minrathous, in the flesh, so to speak. At this time of night, the streets were quiet. A pair of guards walked patrol, talking amiably.
Dude, I have no idea.
Amiably.
Amiably.
It's the blah 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 part that I can't do.
Blah blah blah.
Amiably. We'll do that one. We'll go for that one. I am hydrated, by the way, folks. My throat is just coffee today. That's why it's deeper. But no, I am drinking tea. Don't worry. I appreciate that.
I sent you the internet code.
Yes, you have. No, it's fine. Amiably. Did I get it right the first time? Thanks to casting.
I think so, yes.
You were right there.
Oh,
Amiably.
Amiably.
You made the sentence so much better.
Thank you. Anyway, at this time of night, the streets were quiet. A pair of guards walked patrol, talking amiably. They paid little attention to their rounds, giving the palace only a cursory glance. A cursory glance. The light from their lanterns receded, disappeared around the corner, the sound of footsteps growing fainter and fainter. We waited. 5 minutes. 6. I started to get antsy, but 10 minutes passed, and still nothing. No one else came. Didn't mean they wouldn't, though. My entire body was tense, waiting for the shout of a second patrol that was absolutely going to come at the worst possible time as we slipped through the shadows across the road and started to climb. The crumbling stonework on this decidedly less public facade of the palace provided most of the footholds. The climbing axes we'd brought with us managed the rest, and before long we were up on the lower roof. I glanced below. There, just coming around the corner, the lantern of another patrol. 11 minutes. They were supposed to come every 4 minutes. I stepped through the opening and dropped to the ground, landing awkwardly. Beside me, almost feline in her grace, Irene. Beside me, almost
Irian.
beside me, almost feline in her grace, Irian show off. She wore all black, like me, but where my clothes revealed someone who enjoyed the finer things in life a little more than she should, hers showed off the body of an athlete, and they were tighter. I swallowed, tried to focus. We moved quietly, quickly through the halls, our only close call coming when a pair of elven servants walked by. We stepped into a side room and waited, ready to offer either a convincing explanation or, if that failed, a blackjack to the back of the head. No deaths. We weren't about to kill a servant for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But their few hours unconscious would give us the time we needed. They passed without incident though, and we carefully made our way into the main hall proper.
All right.
I whispered, louder than I'd meant to. Stress. It had been a long time since I'd been here, and my last memories of the palace weren't very pleasant. I tried again, quieter.
We have about 10 minutes until the until the guards come back this way. We need to be gone. I don't really want to explain why we're in the Archon's place at 3 in the morning.
She nodded. I examined the hall, professionally, dispassionately. It seemed surprisingly unguarded. The artifacts and spoils of war protected only by the thin glass of their display cases. But I knew that looks were deceiving. The last time I'd had a job here, I'd spent a couple of days playing tourist, and I'd noticed 2 separate layers of security. The first, the most obvious, the small statues of spiders that dotted the walls of the chamber. More than decorative. Each was paired with another statue on the opposite side of the room, and breaking that connection by, say, walking in front of it, would animate them, at which point they'd do their level best to restrain the intruder until the guards could deal with them. The second was less spectacular, but just as effective. Every third paving stone was safe. Each of the other 2 were attached to magical triggers. Stepping on them would slam the doors of the room shut, trapping the intruder inside. Didn't mean you couldn't get out another way, but it was likely to be a lot harder, and a lot more painful. I knew that one from experience. We picked our way across the massive hall.
Irian.
I'm just saying Irain. I can't. Irain followed exactly in my steps. I was counting on them, not having changed the order of the statues since I'd been here last. We made it to the display cases without incident. My bet had paid off. In front of us, 3 display cases, each intended to contain its own chantry artifact. The centre case where Dumat's Folly had, until recently, sat was empty. The glass in its display case was missing. I took the rune from my satchel and held it against the dies, channeling as small a flow of magic as I could manage. The rune flickered briefly, glowing red. So whatever had been there had, in fact, been Dumat's Folly. I had to be sure. The chantry wasn't about replacing real artifacts with fake ones, while the real one sat in some vault. I looked around. There were a half-dozen doors scattered around the room. Each was locked at this time of night, warded so even if you brought a lockpick, you'd have sentries on you in minutes. The window above the servants' entrance we'd used was another possibility. But on our way up the outside of the building, I'd looked for marks, signs of anyone else using our same path, and found none. And the doors were locked at all times, so that ruled them out. I frowned. My last job here had fallen apart for exactly that reason. There was only really one way in or out, and I knew from bitter, painful experience that going out through the window was almost impossible, just because of where it sat. You needed both arms and both legs and a whole lot of luck. The latter had been lacking for me, and it was why I'd barely escaped with my freedom, never mind what I'd come to steal.
Look.
Irian urged, pointing at the ground. I squinted. Her eyes were better than mine, and saw what she had noticed. Blood left a trail, splattered on the stone, but it suddenly, abruptly, disappeared, right beneath the display case that had contained the artifact. The otherwise parallel lines of the stone floor were slightly askew, and I leaned down. Sure enough, the thin line of dust traced a complete square into the ground, so I knew how they'd gotten in and out. But something felt off. The magic countermeasures were everywhere, and the work of hundreds of years. I had a hard time believing that someone had just dug their way in and not set off any of them. It seemed too obvious. I pulled a small crystal from my satchel and, holding it in front of me, snapped it in half. magical dust flurried out. It would adhere to stronger magic, showing the lines of any enchantments, active or otherwise. A moment passed, a second, and then the dust traced out lines of magic on the display case. It was subtle, far more so than the magic in the rest of the hall, a glimmering web of lines traced across the bottom of each case, marking the outline of the objects within. Incredibly delicate work, a lot more than I could manage. It was tied into the objects in the cases. If one removed the object, or even moved it, the flow of magic would break. I didn't know what would happen, but I had to assume it was bad. But where Dumat's folly had sat, the magic simply stopped. No, not completely. The faintest flicker of it just still stayed there. Had it been missing, I would have guessed they'd just removed the enchantment until the object had been returned. But it was almost as if it were being blocked. Just imperfectly, it didn't make sense. What made that one case special? I needed to trace the magic back to its source, see where it had been severed. I knelt, my knee screaming with agony. I ignored it. Beneath the cases, I found what I was looking for. Where the lines from each case gathered, they formed a thick trunk of magical energy that disappeared underground. But something was keeping that energy from reaching the case that contained Dumat's folly. I closed my eyes and reached out with my senses, letting my own questing energy flow from over the space. There, right where the magic branched, an enchantment inside diverted the energy back into itself. It didn't make sense. The opening in the stone was brute work. The magic at the base of the dais was fine, finer than anything I could do, at least. Maybe they'd brought along a mage? No, anyone who could manage that sort of magic would have needed to dig a hole. Or if they did, they would have sealed it up behind them. I remembered what my client had said about the thieves having had help from inside the chantry. Could be one of them, maybe. Corruption was far from unknown among the priesthood. I looked at the enchantment again. There was something strange about it that itched in the back of my mind. I needed a closer look, but to do that, I would need to pull it apart. And once I did that, the magic would flow back into the dais, which would quickly discover that the folly was missing. At which point I imagined the whole building would know we were there. There wasn't much else I could do though. We'd have to work quickly.
Be ready.
I whispered to Iraine. She nodded. With a gesture, I started to pull the spell apart, releasing the stored energy, just as the spell dissipated. I knew what was bothering me. The magic was weeks old. The pattern of dust on the floor, where the stone had been cut, had been there only a couple of days. It was possible that someone had come in before the theft, but it seemed almost as though there'd been two robberies, weeks apart. But why? I was out of time. There was a loud screech, and suddenly the sound of alarms. The doors around the chambers slammed shut. Well, guess we knew what that magic did. I could hear distant shouting. One of the doors started to open. I focused my energy and hit it with a wave of heat, melting it into the stone. The door screeched to a halt. The sound of footsteps retreated. I figured we'd have a minute, maybe two, before they either blew the door open or found another way in. We had a decision to make. Either stay here... I'm sorry, I just saw eggplantment in the chat. We had a decision to make. Either stay here and deal with the Archon's guards, or go down into the darkness and take our chances. I swallowed. I didn't like the underground, but I had the feeling I'd like sitting in a jail cell even less. With a grunt of effort, I cast a simple spell, one I'd used 1,000 times, just not on this scale, and lifted the square that had been cut out of the floor, stone grating on stone. I gave Irene a look and nodded toward the now open hole. She caught on immediately, wasting no time. Slipping through the opening and into the waiting shadows below. A splash. I looked in, took a deep breath, and leapt in, releasing the enchantment as I fell. Above me, the stone dropped into place with a deafening thud, cutting off the light, and dust showered down on me as I fell. The mud at the bottom of the hole was thick enough, deep enough, that I landed with a soft, squishy sound, instead of the bone cracking force I'd been bracing for. I sat up, spitting out a mouthful of warm, damp soil, wiping mud away from my eyes until I could see again.
Well, that was fun.
I grumbled, rubbing my ankle. Gingerly, a word that John Epler seems to love because we've had it 3 times now. Gingerly, I tested it. A little pain, not enough to keep me from walking, though I probably wouldn't be climbing through many windows for a while. Above, small pieces of debris continued to rain down, shaken loose from the titanic impact. I stood up and took stock. I was covered with mud, every inch of me caked with it. Using my staff as a prop, I got to my feet. Immediately, I sunk to the tops of my boots. Fantastic. I took a step and another, not too bad. I took a third step and my left boot stuck in the mud, my foot sliding out. The boot vanished with a wet slurp. Great. I took another step and my foot came out of my other boot, which promptly vanished too. Even better. Ahead of me, coming back down the tunnel, Irene walked lightly, her outfit almost impeccable, her boots barely sinking into the thick sludge. I sighed.
Footprints. A little way down the tunnel.
She looked up at me and down, her mouth quirking slightly into a smile as she noted my stockinged feet. I glowed at her, daring her to say something, but she only raised an eyebrow and then turned. I could see her shoulders shaking though. Everyone thinks they're a lot funnier than they are. Oh. 100 or so feet down the tunnel, the footprints disappeared. A couple of 100 feet farther in, the tunnel split. To the left, it continued as before, thick with mud, while straight ahead, the mud turned to dry stone. I gave Irene a look and pulled out a coin.
Flip for it?
She gave me an arch look.
I'll take this one.
She looked down the side tunnel and her mouth, twitching again, fighting a smile.
Don't want to get my boots dirty.
I sighed and shook my head, resigning myself to my muddy fate. The tunnel grew smaller, narrower, and before long it was too low to walk through. I'd need to crawl. I got down on my knees and continued forward, squelching all the way. 100 more feet and I found it, half buried in the mud, a rough spun Hessian bag, inside a half dozen heavy mining picks, and a note, carefully wrapped to protect it from the elements. I opened it as carefully as I could. Difficult with me covered in mud. I recognised the language immediately. Qunari. That complicated things, but I couldn't make head or tails of it. Not even a few words here or there. Damn! Maybe Arain would have better luck. She'd always had a better eye for this kind of thing. And there was something else on that note. Blood. Whoever'd hurt themselves upstairs could have been the ones who handled the note. It wasn't much to go on, but it was a whole lot more than we'd had before. I rolled the note back up, tightly, so that it would survive the journey back through the tunnel. Crawling back, I emerged to find Arain waiting patiently. She saw me and reached out a hand, helping me to my feet.
Anything?
She asked, absent-minded. She asked absent-mindedly, wiping her hands on her pants. Wordlessly, I handed her the note. She unrolled it and She unrolled it and stared at it for a moment, frowning in concentration.
Can you read it?
I asked, a little impatiently. The mud was starting to dry out, harden, and I just wanted to get out of there and clean myself up. She nodded.
Yes.
She met my gaze and shrugged.
They tried to recruit me a while back. Promised me a life of glorious freedom under Tikkun. I went to one of their training camps. Didn't stick.
I raised an eyebrow at that, but she continued.
It's orders. Well, instructions. Ben Hasrath. Locations and names are in code, but it's telling them to get the item and return home. Not to be seen either.
I frowned. So far, the Ben Hasrath had more or less stayed out of the war, which was strange. I'd always pictured the Qunari as more of a single mind. But while the military Antam had seemed eager to fight, ready to avenge centuries-old wrongs, the Ben Hasrath had sat it out. Stayed to the sidelines, avoiding direct confrontation wherever possible. This whole thing seemed to suggest that they had maybe reconsidered that position.
I found something too. It was shoved underneath some bricks at the end of the tunnel.
From her own satchel, she pulled out a leather-wrapped package.
You're not going to believe this.
I took the package and frowned. It was remarkably heavy and large. I pulled at the strings, undoing them, and unwrapped the leather. I gasped. Couldn't help it. It was Dumat's folly. I looked at Arain, my eyes wide. She shook her head.
I don't know what the hell's going on. Maybe we're just lucky?
She snorted. I reached into my satchel, pulled out the rune, placed it against the artifact and channeled energy. Nothing. The rune remained dark, the artifact as well. I wrapped it back up again.
It's a fake.
It didn't make any sense.
The hell does that mean?
There was a note of confusion in her. There was a note of confusion in her voice. Not that I blamed her.
One of two things, I'm guessing. First off, there were two robberies. Either the first robber stole the real folly, and the Chantry replaced it with a fake, which the Qunari found, and then subsequently discarded.
She shook her head.
No, the way it was sitting, it's been there for a few weeks at least.
That made even less sense, but I pressed on.
Or the first robber stole a fake, and the Chantry replaced it with the real one. Until they could make another convincing fake.
I nodded at the leather-wrapped package in my hands.
Probably figured it out once they were away.
Which means.
Irene started. I nodded.
The Cunari have the real one.
The whole thing had gotten a lot more complicated, but at least we had an idea where we needed to go. Once we got there, once we got the artifact back, we could figure out the rest. I placed the package in my satchel. Still might be useful.
So, where do we go from here?
She asked. It was a good question.
First, we do something with this fake. Put it someplace safe. We can't find the real one. Maybe the client won't know the difference?
I doubted it. She'd given me the rune after all. Still, I felt better having it as an insurance policy.
And then we go after the Cunari.
I held up the note I had retrieved.
Any idea what they mean by home?
I asked, already knowing the answer. No way it'd be that easy. Of course not.
It's in code. I could probably break it eventually, but
She shrugged.
it'd take a while. Longer than I imagined we have.
I sighed. A dead end. Damn it. I didn't want to return the money, but I didn't see any other way. Visions of losing our home, of being kicked out onto the streets, danced through my head. No, I had to think. There had to be something we could do. I frowned, chewing my lip. Come on. The blood, of course.
Let me see that note.
She handed it to me wordlessly. I took a deep breath, focused my energy, hoped there was enough blood. Now that was a phrase that felt authentically Tevinter. I let the energy flow through my staff, into the letter, into the blood. I let my mind go blank. Several minutes went by, and I was beginning to think that the blood was too old to dry to work when I got it. Flashes of images, a dock, a twin lighthouse, the smell of salt in the air. Sorry, that's like a Taylor Swift lyric, that. Salt, anyway. The smell of salt in the air, the feeling of spray on the skin, a flag I didn't recognize. Impressions, and then they disappeared. I took a deep breath.
Well?
Asked Irene. I described what I'd seen to her. She listened carefully. When I'd finished, she sighed and shook her head.
Recognize any of it?
I asked. She nodded.
Well?
I know where they are, and I know that you're not going to like it.
Ooh. I shrunk back against the wall, making myself as inconspicuous as possible, as in front of me, guards marched by in formation. I dressed nondescriptly, a rough-spun brown tunic over a top of grey pants and scuffed leather boots, but I still felt like I stood out. Like they could tell I was Tevinter by some indescribable quality I possessed. I wondered if I smelt like Manrathis. Kontar was fairly low on my list of places I wanted to go. It wasn't the weather, which was warm, or the scenery, which was pleasant. It wasn't even that it was part of Ravane, which had a less than cordial relationship with Tevinter. It was that, as a town, they decided that the Cune made sense, and so they all converted. And the Cunari liked Tevinter less than most. There was a tap on my shoulder. I nearly screamed, but bit down on my tongue. Not a great way to keep hidden. I turned around, working under the assumption that if this were the Cunari here to take me away, they wouldn't have warned me. It was only Irene, her expression tinged with faint amusement. She'd changed clothes. Now she wore the brown leathers of the other elves we'd seen around town. Those who'd pledged their allegiance to the Cune.
Find anything out?
I asked, my heart racing. She nodded. We traced the thieves to the ship in front of us. It hadn't been hard. Well, not hard for her. No one had wanted to talk to me. I'd covered my Tevinter accent with a Ferelden one that Irene claimed made me sound like a dying frog. But I'd spoken to her easily enough. Once she'd spread a little coin around, at least. No one had said that. Oh, this is me, I assume. Yeah, I'll do this one. No one had said the Ben Hasrif are all. No one had said the Ben Hasrif are over on Dock 17, of course. But you could tell a lot by what they weren't saying. Reading the words in silences was something you learned early on in Tevinter. We were a passive-aggressive... Oh, I need to do it. Oh, let me do it again. The front. LB, put a little icon. Oh, no. Okay, right. I'll try and do Kermit the Frog. Oh, I don't even know how I did it last time. Right. No one had heard the Ben Hasrif. No one had heard the Ben Hasrif all over on Dock 17. Of course, but you couldn't tell a lot by what they weren't saying. Reading the words in the silences was something you learnt early on in Tevinter. We were, of course, a passive-aggressive nation. Everyone had gone to great lengths, not to mention Dock 17. Great and obvious lengths. Nothing else in town got the same sort of treatment. But whenever the conversation turned to the waterfront, no one spoke of Dock 17. Whoever had taught them to be careful hadn't done a great job. I didn't plan to correct that training. After that, it hadn't been too difficult to find the dock. Going with the theme of the day, it was, of course, isolated. Almost impossible to keep an eye on. At least, if you were me. Iraine had an easier time of it. She blended in with the other elves, their serious and grim demeanour coming easily to her. So she'd gone off to scout ahead while I loitered, trying not to draw too much attention to myself. Iraine sat down beside me.
They've been taking on supplies. Food to last a lengthy journey. Barrels of food, salted pork and smoked fish, more fresh water, got lock, that sort of thing. Sounds as though they're planning on leaving port within the day.
Damn, that wasn't good. That I'd been able to track them to Kontar was a small miracle. No chance I'd be able to track them again. That is a spell mistake. No chance I'd be able to track them again. Okay, fine. No chance I'd be able to track them again. We needed to act right away, which meant one of two things. Either a frontal assault, and I really didn't want to do that, or stealth. That seemed like the safer option, but there was only one way in and out of a Qunari ship. And while Iraine might be able to pass for a local, I felt like I probably couldn't.
So, what's the plan?
I asked. She looked me up and down, critically, and then gave me a smile. I didn't like that smile.
How do you feel about salted pork?
Brilliant. I'd never thought of myself as claustrophobic. Of course, that was easier to say when I wasn't packed in a barrel, surrounded on all sides by salted pork. Not to mention how much I needed to contort just to fit in there. I quite liked the taste of salted pork, or at least I did. I was pretty sure that I'd never be able to look at it again. The smell filled my world, and I only hoped that the air holes cut in the barrels would be enough. I didn't want to die with pork as my last memory. To be honest, it sounds like a good way to die. There was a jolting movement, a heavy thud, and I felt the pork move around me. I was being carried. I could hear the faint murmur of conversation, muffled by the wood of the barrel and the thick slabs of meat. We'd counted about 300 paces from where they kept their supplies to the ship itself, and I counted them in my head. Waiting for a barked command for the thud as my barrel was dropped, pried open. But it didn't come. I could hear the guard at the boat exchange pleasantries with whoever was carrying me, and then we were up on a ramp, down a set of stairs. The barrel was placed carefully on the ground, and the sound of footsteps receded. I waited. 100 count. 200. I was levering open the top. I was levering open the top of the barrel when I heard voices. Shit! I hunkered back down, hoped no one would investigate my barrel too closely. The voices nearby were muffled, but the words were clear enough. Oh, shall I bring back Kermit or Elmo? Okay, let's try it. Oh, it sounds Elven. Well, we'll try it anyway. Did anybody get a good look at Did anybody get a good look at the two of them? A male voice. It sounded Elven.
No, sir.
Female. A little no, sorry. Fairy, it's you.
Oh.
Start again.
Oh.
Sorry, Fairy. Sorry. Everybody forget Kermit. The voices nearby were muffled, but the words were clear enough.
Did anyone get a good look at the two of them?
A male voice. It sounded Elven.
No, sir.
Female. A little deeper. Kunari. Maybe? This is also... Yeah, this is also... Yeah.
Take half the guards, sweep the taverns and the docks, find them. They must be here for the artifact, and if they are, chances are they're working for him. We cannot risk them making their way onto the ship.
I had an idea as to who he meant by them. Not sure who he meant by him, though. But it seemed we'd made our move just in time.
Yes, God.
One set of footsteps, heavy, booted. They receded. Several moments passed. The other voice, the male, sighed. And then a second set of footsteps receded. The heavy thud of the door swinging shut. I gave it another minute, and then emerged, brushing salted pork bits out of my hair, off my cloak. Bit of pork scratching, probably. I was in the hold. It was filled with shelves. They stretched into the distance, forming corridors, small rooms. Each was stacked high with boxes, Canary writing on the outside. I opened one at random. The caster says I should narrate in Elmo's voice. I don't think you want that.
Do that for the last one.
I opened one at random. A magical artifact. Not the one I was looking for, though. Examination of a couple more turned up the same thing. And inside each crate, written notes. Some more than just stockpiling. They were studying them. I shook my head. This wasn't getting me anywhere. The door opened and I tensed. Nowhere to hide. But it was only a rain. Still wearing the Kunari leathers from earlier, she'd made it onto the Dreadnaught herself. But there was a notable absence of salted pork odor. She looked at me. I glared at her, daring her to say something. She just smiled. I gestured at the room, at the shelves of crates that seemed to stretch on forever.
I don't know how we're going to find Dumont's Folly in all of this.
We need to split up. You take north, I'll take south.
She said, already opening crates. She was right. We needed to spread out our efforts. Hope one of us got lucky.
Fine. Warn me if you hear them, though.
She nodded.
Will do. And I promise I won't get bored.
She kept the laughter out of her voice. Wow. She kept the laughter out of her voice, but it was a close thing. and I could tell she was struggling. No respect. I moved down the shelves to where they formed another large alcove. The task in front of us was enormous, and I doubted we had enough time before someone else came down here. I sighed. Think. I looked around the room. Back at the makeshift hallway where the shelves stretched farther back into the ship. Boot prints, but none as fresh as those in here. I had to guess they'd packed the ship from the outside in. So whatever they'd packed last was most likely to be close to the entrance. There was a thin layer of dust on several of the crates. I ruled those out. The Folly wouldn't have been on the ship for more than a couple of days, not long enough to get dusty. That left 6. The first 4 were more dead ends, but the 5th, I opened the crate. Dumat's Folly. I smiled. All right. I reached into my satchel and pulled out the rune that my client had given me. I wanted to make sure the artifact was the real thing before I took it back. Not that I had any reason to believe otherwise, but I'd promised my client I'd verify first. I moved the rune toward the object, and it started to vibrate, to glow. I hesitated. Something was wrong. The rune was thrumming with energy, and I could feel the artifact reacting to it. But the magic was wild, and what's more, I could feel it growing. It was hungry. I started to turn to find Iraine.
Well done.
The voice came from behind me. Magic was already flooding through me as I tried to create a defense. Too late. Energy enveloped me, and I felt my muscles spasm. My staff clattered to the ground, and I fell sideways, stunned, my head bouncing off the floor hard enough to send stars dancing across my vision. She emerged from deeper into the ship, a lone elf, my client. She traded her thick winter clothing for a simple robe, embroidered with an unknown symbol, her hair brushed back away from her pointed ears. She strode toward me, calmly, unhurrying. Not that she needed to hurry. I couldn't move a muscle. A paralysis spell, and a pretty strong one at that. She knelt beside me and gave me a look that mixed pity with contempt. She reached down, pried my fingers open. The rune that she'd given me, she held it aloft, examining it critically. Muttering a single word over and over again.
Felasan.
There was a hum, and the rune began to glow a steady and unpleasant red. I'd been around enough magic to know that was probably not a good thing.
I hired you for a reason. I'm glad that my trust was not misplaced. You did well for a shem.
The last word was tinged with something close to disgust. I couldn't move my mouth to scowl, so I had to settle for thinking some very unflattering thoughts.
Who put you up to this?
I asked, or tried to. My mouth still wasn't working properly. The paralysis had affected my whole body. So it came out as... She smirked. Guess she'd understand. Guess she'd understood well enough.
I act freely for the Dreadwolf, to bring back what was once ours and must be ours again.
Dreadwolf. Crap. I'd heard the rumours, of course. Dozens of elves off to heed the call of some god. Guess I'd found one of them, at least.
The Qunari left sooner than I'd expected. Their trail grew cold. But I had you. You found them for me. Found the weapon. I knew you would. Now see what you have helped me accomplish.
And the real Dumont's folly.
I could move my lips now, but the words were still hard to form. She looked at me, her expression cold.
Back in Invertus. Or it was. I had no need for it. Once I took it from the palace, I buried it.
So what we'd found in the city was the real thing, replaced with something else, which the Kunari had then stolen. But why go to all that trouble to have them take it? I got my answer. She held the rune up, pressed it against Dumat's folly. The two seemed to melt together, the rune becoming a part of the artifact. It began to glow, pulsing rhythmically. A little bit brighter each time. The air started to grow warm. I didn't know what it meant, but probably something bad. And something else. Energy streamed to the device from each crate I'd opened. From the ground, a magic dagger I dropped in my hurried search glowed, a line of energy connecting it to the artifact. And then it crumbled, the dagger turning to dust in front of my eyes. That also seemed bad.
It is an ingenious device. Not a piece of the Black City like the true Dumat's Folly, but taken from the same time. It draws magic into itself, stores it, and when it is full...
She clasped her hands together and then pulled them apart. The universal sign for something exploding. Yeah, not good.
And now...
She sighed.
I'm afraid that this really is the end. You are resourceful. I doubt you could do much now, but in case...
She drew a small crystal from her robe. It started to crackle with energy, and she pointed it at me.
Comfort that in your sacrifice, the glory of the true people will be restored.
There was a crack, the thud of flesh on flesh, and she fell to the ground. Behind her stood Irene, rubbing her fist. She stepped around the crumbled form and knelt beside me, helping me up. The feeling was returning to my limbs now, and I was able to stagger to my feet, stiff-legged and sore.
About time.
Or close enough. My mouth still wasn't fully recovered from the paralysis.
Sorry. I didn't hear her immediately, and when I did, I figured I should wait for an opening.
She shook her head.
Each one of those damned Fen'Harel cultists. Ooh, if we blow up enough people, ancient Elvenan is definitely coming back.
She caught my questioning glance.
They tried to recruit me a few years ago. I said no.
Is there anyone out there that hasn't tried to recruit you?
I asked. She shrugged in response. I felt like that was an answer enough. There was a groan from behind us, the other elf regaining consciousness. I growled in the back of my throat, stalked over to where she lay, grabbed her by the front of her robe, lifting her into the air. She blinked her eyes slowly, and then they focused on me. Realization, followed by hatred. I didn't care. The feeling was mutual.
You're going to help us. And if you don't...
I snarled. Her teeth clenched. Green foam started to fill her mouth. I dropped her to the ground and she started spasming, her legs drumming on the wooden deck. Her back arched once, twice, and then she was still. I knelt beside her and put my fingers to the side of her throat. Nothing. Dead. Damn it.
And that's the other reason I didn't join. Death before capture. Not my sort of thing at all.
Irene shook her head. Looking up at the device, it was starting to get very warm.
Can you disable the device?
Iraine's voice was steady, calm. I shook my head.
No. Can't get close enough.
I picked up a piece of wood from the floor and threw it towards the object. There was a flash and it disintegrated.
Too much energy buildup.
She met my gaze, her eyes steady.
So that's it then.
She sighed.
I guess it's a bad time to say I was right about this job.
I chuckled. Couldn't help it.
No. Can't think of a better time.
She rested her head on my shoulder. I embraced her, and she leaned into me.
Thousands of people.
The words were little more than a whisper.
A whole town gone. Because of us.
She was right. If I hadn't taken the job, if I hadn't found the note, found the blood, if I hadn't tracked the artifact to Kontar, to the ship. I paused. Ship? We were on a ship. I laughed, and Iraine looked at me as if I'd gone crazy.
Come on!
I shouted and ran out the door toward the deck above. I emerged into the sunlight, blinking. The day was beautiful and warm. The deck was empty. The sails sat limply, the wind little more than a breeze. Not great. It was going to make this whole thing a lot harder, but it wasn't the end of the world either. I had other ways to make the ship move. Beside me, behind me, Iraine emerged at a run. I pointed at the sails.
Can you rig them?
I asked. She nodded, moving past me without stopping. Good. I didn't need to explain my plan. The deck was strangely silent. The first lucky break of the day, which would come during shift change. Or they didn't think that anyone would be dumb enough to try and steal a Qunari Dreadnaught. Showed what they knew. We worked quickly. I raised the anchor and Iraine rigged the ship to leave the harbour. Dock 17's isolation worked to our benefit, as no one questioned why a human and an elf were readying a Qunari Dreadnaught for travel. Through it all, we were keenly aware of the growing hum as beneath us, Dumat's folly prepared for its final act. Finally, we were ready. I took a deep breath and let my magic fill me. Iraine went below decks, ensuring that we were, in fact, alone on the vessel. No sense getting this far and then catching a spear in the gut. I channeled all my anger, my guilt, my refusal to lay down and die through me, through my staff and into the air. The sails fluttered gently, settled, and then filled. With a jerk, the ship began to move, spurred on by the magical wind. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was working. An arrow flashed past me, thudding into the mast in front of me. I lost focus. The gale turned into a breeze, the boat slowing down. Stopping, I turned to see 5 elves wearing Qunari armour. As I watched, a 6th climbed over the edge. Shit! I guess someone had been paying attention. 5 of them wielded javelins. The one who'd fired the arrow knocked another, aimed it directly at me. I raised my hands. The haft of a spear cracked him on the side of the head. He tumbled to the ground. On either side of him, the other 5 turned. Iraine. She stood behind them, soaked through the sea, a smirk on her lips. I knew that expression. She settled into a combat stance and raised a hand, beckoned the Qunari. 2 of them leaped forward, one going high, while the other went low. She batted away one strike, leaped over the other one, and drove a knee into a gut. The guard collapsed. A 3rd one stabbed his spear down, trying to catch her on the tip, but she grabbed the haft and used her momentum to swing up. her booted feet coming up and into her opponent's nose. There was a crack, audible across the ship, and a spray of blood as he stumbled backward, down. The first guard she dodged had drawn a pair of daggers and stabbed at her unprotected back, but she'd anticipated the move. With a grace and agility that reminded me I was lucky to have won even a tenth of our sparring matches, she leapt straight up, catching hold of the trailing lines of the sail and tucked her knees beneath her, the weapon skiving by just below her. She dropped down on top of the other elf's shoulders, and with a twisting motion of her hips, sent him flying toward the deck, where he impacted with a crunch. His dagger clattered to the deck. She's a badass. The other two guards were more cautious. They had their spears out, pointed directly at her, circling her. She was slowly backing away, but she was also running out of deck. They had her cornered. One jabbed his spear at her, and she caught the blow on the haft of her own spear, but it broke in half. A second guard swiped at her, and the blade caught her on the arm, drawing blood. She hissed. The first one raised his weapon, ready to strike again, to finish it. It was the opening I'd been waiting for. I channeled energy through my staff again. It reached out from its tip into the skies. Lightning answered and crashed down into the tip of the javelin that the first guard carried. The blast sent him and his companion flying, tumbling across the deck before they slammed up against the side. I took a breath, let it out. All 6 Qunari elves lay unconscious. Iraine stood, already tearing cloth from her tunic to form a makeshift bandage for her wound.
We can't leave them here.
She was right. They'd done their job, nothing more. They didn't deserve to die for that. I looked around. There, bracketing the ship, 2 lifeboats. I looked her in the eyes, nodded at the closest one. She got it immediately. We worked quickly, and soon all 6 guards had been loaded in the lifeboat. But there was still one more person that needed to be there. I pointed at Iraine, at the lifeboat.
You too.
My voice was shaky.
This is my mistake, Irian. You don't need to die for this.
She snorted.
You and your martyr complex. Can you keep the wind up and steer the boat at the same time?
I just need to go straight and out to the sea as far as possible. I don't need to steer that for that.
We didn't have time for this argument.
What happens if you catch a wave? Run into another ship? Or the wind, the real wind I mean, picks up?
Damn it, she had a point.
You can't do this without me. We're a team, aren't we? Isn't that what you always said?
Using my own words against me. But she was right. I couldn't do it alone. Too many things could go wrong. I needed her help. I started to speak, to thank her. She held up a hand.
We can speak after.
The chi in her voice was forced, but I appreciated that she tried. She ran past me toward the front of the ship, taking the steps up 2 at a time. I settled onto the deck, cross-legged, my staff laying across my legs, and took a deep breath, found my center, and began to pour energy through my staff into the air. In front of me, Iraine stood, her expression defiant, hands tight on the ship's wheel. The wind picked up again, even heavier than before. The sails filled, and the ship flew forward. I was glad I was already sitting down, as it was Iraine barely Iraine barely kept her balance. We were off. Behind us, I was dimly aware of shouting, of the sound of horns, but it was too late. We were gone. The air wiped.
Whipped. Yep.
The air whipped by us. A rain kept the wheel steady. Our course straight. Behind us, Kontar receded. Epler loves the word receded as well. The hum of magical energy was louder now, vibrating through the wood of the ship itself. Fatigue started to creep into my limbs, into my thoughts. I could feel the wind slackening. Released the enchantment. It'd have to do. I climbed to my feet, almost falling over. Ren came over, steadied me. I held her hand tightly, didn't let go. I looked back. We'd gone farther than I realised. A good 4 miles outside of Kontar. I didn't know if it was far enough. Not like we had a lot of choice. Below us, the thrum of magic. I was thinking about the Skyrim shouts there. You know, like the Dragonborn title for them, like the Thum. Anyway, below us, the thrum of magic had taken on a keening edge. Flames edged with red were licking at the deck now, centered on where I knew the artifact sat. The heat was almost unbearable. The sound, even more so. Endgame, then? Another Taylor Swift song. I pulled Irene close. She was crying, her tears mixing with the salt spray on my robes. I held her tightly, my own eyes watering. Damn it, it wasn't fair.
I just wish...
I stopped. I didn't know what to say. Whatever it was, it would never be enough, not even close. She looked up, met my gaze.
I know.
She said, she smiled again, then a real smile.
At least we get to do this together.
I looked around. I'd always expected to meet my end in some alley in Manrathis, not on the deck of a Cunari Dreadnaught. My eyes fell on the lifeboat. Seemed cruel. No way we'd ever outrow the blast. I looked at my staff, looked at the lifeboat. Oh shit.
I'm not giving up yet.
I muttered. I grabbed Iraine's hand, pulled her with me toward the lifeboat. She eyed it, her expression of despair unchanging.
We have minutes, maybe. We can't row fast enough to get to the shore in time. Not with only 2 of us at the oars.
I grinned.
Who said anything about rowing?
Held up my staff. She got it. She shook her head, laughing.
You're crazy.
Slim hope's better than none, right?
I grabbed a coil of rope from the deck, heaved it on board, and started tying knots as quickly as I could. Irene frowned, but took her cue from me. After a dozen heartbeats, I looked at our handiwork. A half-dozen lines were tied to the oar hooks, crisscrossing the boat. Had to hope it was enough. We climbed in, and Irene cut the lines that held the lifeboat on the ship. It dropped 20 feet into the water, landing with a splash. I slipped the loose coils around myself and Irene, and we tied them tightly as I dared. They needed enough give to keep us on the lifeboat without tearing us limb from limb. I took out a deep breath. Irene squeezed my hand tightly. I squeezed back, let out the breath I'd been holding, pointed my staff toward the stern of the lifeboat, toward the water. Had to hope this worked. I drew in all the energy I had left, every scrap I could manage, channeling it through my body, through the staff. A cone of force erupted forth into the water, and the lifeboat rocketed forward with a jolt. I was dimly aware of Irene laughing wildly as spray rocketed up in front of us, drenching us. I didn't look, didn't dare turn my attention from the magic in front of me. I fed every frustration, every emotion I could into the spell, and I could feel the boat skipping over the waves, moving faster than I would have ever expected. We bounced up once, twice, more times than I could count. But the ropes held, kept us from going overboard. The Dreadnaught was receding. Again, receding. The reddish glow at its heart growing smaller and smaller. I risked a look behind me and realised we were almost at shore. I let the spell drop, let the energy fade out. The lifeboat continued accelerating toward the shore. Shit! I tried to turn, to project the force in the other direction, to slow down, but the ropes, the same harness that kept us from going overboard, now got in my way. The shore got closer. Iraine started frantically cutting ropes, freeing us both, but it was too late. We sailed out of the water and up over the beach. I channeled the last of my strength into a shield, a sphere surrounding us both, hoping it would be enough. I grabbed Iraine and leapt, hugging her tightly to me, praying to any divine being that could hear me that it would be enough, that I hadn't just doomed us. We slammed into the beach, sparks flying up. Sorry, it's also another Taylor Swift song, Sparks Flying. Sparks flying up where my shield hit the ground. The force of our impact sent sand flying up into the air, our sphere digging deep furrows. We bounced once, twice, jostling within the magical orb, but it still held. Finally, we slid to a stop. I waited a moment and then let the shield drop. I staggered to my feet, looked out at the water. I thought I could see the Dreadnaught, the burning deck of a distant speck on the horizon. A moment passed, another, and suddenly, a flash of light, a second sun on the horizon. The Doomat's folly, every ounce of magic it could drain from the ship, released in a single cataclysmic blast. And just behind the light, a shockwave, the waves rising, cresting. The sound came next. It was the roar of 100 dragons, the crash of 1,000 avalanches. It filled the world, and dimly I could hear glass shattering farther up the shore, in the town, and immediately behind it, a wall of water. We were hundreds of feet inland, close to the town, but it still drenched us, soaking us to the bone. I didn't care. I welcomed the cold. The cold meant we were alive. I kissed Iraine deeply, and she returned it, leaned into it. I realized in the feeling of her, our warm, soft lips on my own, of the taste of salt. I pulled her tighter, closer. Living in the moment, the wind whipped out at our hair, at our clothes, as the waves continued to crash just below us. Dimly, I heard the sound of shouting, of booted feet running. Then the feeling of rough hands grabbing us by the shoulders, hauling us to our feet, pulling us apart. They spun us around, surrounding us, marching us forward, away from the false sun on the horizon, and toward town. They brought us to a tavern. It was empty except for us, 2 guards, and a tall elf with dark hair, wearing the simple brown leather of the Qunari. He sat at a table, his expression unreadable. I returned the look and sat down across from him. Beside him, refusing to sit, Iraine stood, arms crossed, her own expression remote.
Tell me what you know.
I recognised his voice, the one who'd been called Gat. His tone was quiet calm, but something else. Urgency, maybe, coloured his words. I leaned back. I was tired. More than tired. I was exhausted.
That elf, she got to Dumont's Folly first. Hid it, replaced it with the weapon that destroyed your ship. Then you stole it. The weapon, I mean.
I shrugged.
I'm guessing someone hired you to do it?
Ben Hasrith did not work for hire.
He stated the words calmly, matter-of-factly. Then he sighed.
However, that is not to say that we cannot be persuaded in other ways. One of our agents spoke of Dumont's Folly, suggested it was an artifact of great power and danger integral to Fen'Harel's plan.
He waved his hand irritably.
We captured him, planned to interrogate him, but he killed himself first rather than be questioned.
Lots of that going around.
I muttered.
Why bring it here then?
Iraine asked. A good question.
The vessel it was on, was called the Darbarad. A Kunari word that means magical isolation is the closest in your language. It was where we studied magical energies to better understand you and your kind. Once it was a fortress, but its walls proved ineffective. This time we felt it would be safer if it simply kept moving using speed and secrecy instead of fortifications.
His voice turned wry.
Clearly we were mistaken.
He leaned back.
The greater question, I think, is why hire you? Why not simply find the artifact herself?
Opportunity.
I said the words slowly. Gat looked at me curiously.
I don't doubt we helped her track you down. But that wasn't the real prize. Not for her. Tevinter Altus striking at a Kunari settlement that had yet to enter hostilities? The Ben Hassarath wouldn't be able to sit the war out anymore. Hell, it might even bring Ravain in. And who knows who else. Utter and complete chaos.
I felt nauseous. What I'd almost done, almost been responsible for. He nodded.
There is little chance that we would not have struck back, and struck back hard. Any thought of peace would have vanished. Our people would have settled for nothing less than the total destruction of Tevinter.
I let my head fall into my hands. Iraine had been right. I'd let my pride blind me. Hadn't paused a moment to think about what I was doing, and it had almost cost the world everything. The weight of my own foolish decisions was suffocating.
But that's not what happened.
Gat said quietly.
You risked your lives, you saved Kantar, and more than that, you saved my people. You could have left my six to die, but you went out of your way to spare them.
I shrugged, embarrassed.
You would have done the same.
Perhaps. Perhaps not. But either way, just as it would have been hard to deny Tevinter's antagonism had the plan succeeded, it becomes equally difficult to deny that Tevinter saved us today.
He smirked.
I can think of a half-dozen elves who will happily spread that tale.
I snorted.
Hate to break it to you, but most of my people still want to see you dead. A Kunari is a Kunari is a Kunari.
A truth with us as well, I'm afraid. The Entente will still agitate for us to move against you more openly, but we can blunt their strike. The Ben Hassrath will remain officially neutral. More important, free to act against the true threat, and with our allies standing next to us.
The last was almost a question. He looked at me expectantly. I hated to disappoint him, and the truth was I was tempted. But I shook my head.
Look, I'm happy I didn't start a war. Even happier that I didn't let some egomaniacal elf trick me into starting one. And I'd like to help, but right now, I just want to go home.
You cannot.
He held up a hand to forestall my explosion of anger.
I do not deny your wish. If you want to travel back to Minrathous, I will help you find passage, but you are now known to Fen'Harel. He has eyes everywhere, inside Tevinter without a doubt.
So, where should we go?
Iraine asked quietly. She had moved closer and was standing directly beside me. I put an arm against her waist, pulled her closer. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Gat studied us for a moment, contemplating, and then spoke.
You cannot stay with us, nor I imagine would you want to, but we have other allies, a dwarf in Kirkwall. He will want to hear what you have to say about the enemy, and more than that, he will have work for you. Something more than survival, a chance to strike back, a chance to matter.
I thought about it, thought about never going back to Minrathous, about spending the rest of my life on the run, waiting for a dagger in the back, an arrow in the night. I chuckled. It didn't sound much different from life in the Imperium, to be honest. Besides, I looked up at Iraine. She smiled at me. My home wasn't about things or a place. It was wherever she was. That was the decision I'd made all those years ago, and it was the one I had never regretted. Not for a minute. I sighed, reached out my hand, Gat took it, and we shook. But there was still unfinished business.
We'll go to Kirkwall. Eventually.
I looked at Iraine again and my smile widened.
But first, any chance we can go to Valrayo?
Woo! And that is half up front. Well done, everybody. Massive round of applause for that one. That was fantastic. What did we think of the story?
I really liked that story.
Yeah?
Me too, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
think that's one of my favorites in the book.
Yeah, yeah.
I just loved how it was a mage thief. Like,
Yeah.
I've always wanted that in the game, so
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm a thief and a mage.
I loved the exposition on the Qunari as well, because like previously, especially from Trespasser, you get the impression it's all the Qunari that are all hostile with the invasion, but now it's like, obviously you get the other stories like Three Trees to Midnight that explore the Antam and the Ben Hassrath divide, but this one, just in case you didn't remember that, just point blank tells you the Ben Hassrath are not that they are neutral. They are not against or for you. They don't care. They are against Fen'Harel. They don't care about the invasion. The Antam are unsanctioned. If it was a proper invasion, they would be all in support of it. But because Rasan has gone against the wishes of the Arishok, they're against it pretty much, as we saw in Three Trees to Midnight. And I like how it specifically points it out of, we're not all bad. Well, we're not all invading. We are after Fen'Harel. That's our goal, and I like that because it means that they, we could see not maybe Gat again potentially, but like we could have some Ben Hassrath or some element of the Qunari that could be on our side. I don't know, but yeah,
A temporary alliance. There's a common enemy.
Yeah.
My enemy is my friend.
Exactly.
It's an interesting implication, definitely.
Isn't it? Yeah. Like,
Also, really like the little tie-in with Varric at the end.
Yes!
Like they don't say his name, but it's obviously
Yeah.
yeah.
but like,
And it implies that there are other people that Gat has probably sent to Varric as well that got
also
pulled into some kind of scheme.
Yeah.
like
I
there's a
didn't
whole
think that,
network
yeah.
being created. It's so interesting, and I'm really curious to see how much of that we'll see in Veilguard.
Yeah.
I'm going crazy.
yeah.
And that's for those in chat who were like, who's Gat? Gat is the elven male warrior that you meet in Iron Bull's mission loyalty quest. where you have to decide the fate of the charges, and he's the one that wants Bull to side with the Qun and to get back into his, to choose the Qunari Dreadnaught or the Qunari troops over the charges. He comes across as a bit. I get it. Obviously, he wants to save the Qun. That's why. But he comes across a bit bratty in Inquisition, a little bit. But when you meet him, he's sound. But in this, obviously, he's still that same energy. But he's definitely more concerned about Vadis, I would say. So, but yeah, he's that dude in Inquisition that pops up for a brief moment.
I was
This
sus of
does.
him in Inquisition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
yeah.
story makes me like him slightly better, so
Yeah.
maybe he's had some character
Yeah.
growth between Inquisition and
Yeah.
I really hope so.
Well, I mean, his first introduction wasn't great for
Yeah,
us
yeah,
because
yeah.
he's basically like, "Let the Chargers
Yeah,
die," and I'm like,
exactly.
yeah.
"No."
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's
I
like,
never could.
Yeah, it's like,
No.
I don't know if I want to do that.
That will never happen in that game.
No.
Exactly. My first playthrough, I was like, save all of these strangers on a ship I don't know about that are kind of sus because they're
Yeah.
Qunari, or save this very small group of also strangers that I've
Yeah.
just met.
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew attached to the strangers.
And we see a lot more of Krem throughout the game. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Also,
that's the
it's
thing. Yeah,
been made clear that Bull cares about them. So you also have that, like, even if you don't know them, he does, and he
exactly.
cares.
Yeah, exactly. When you have all that time with them as well, it's like, why would I choose random Qunari over the charges? I don't really see the incentive, really. To be honest, yeah, I don't know why you would choose the Qun over them. I don't, unless you're playing an evil playthrough. I don't get the incentive of, oh yes, Iron Bull going back on the Qun could be a good thing, because I suppose as a war asset potentially.
Yeah, if you're role playing as somebody who was like, well, we really need these forces more than we need these little guys, but
Yeah.
I personally pick Chargers every time because I'm just like, no,
Same.
I can't trust the Qun.
no.
I think
No,
that
it was also kind of unclear. Sorry.
Go ahead.
It was. It's also kind of unclear. Like they say, you get a Qunari alliance and information from the Ben Hassrath, but you don't really get like a detailed what exactly does that mean until it's already done and you can't take it back.
Yeah.
You know?
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think that part of the problem with Gat as a character is that in Inquisition, he's like the opposing force to the Chargers, and the Chargers are made very likable,
Yeah.
and he's essentially the figurehead for the rest of the Qun,
It's true.
for the
Yeah.
Qun wanting Iron Bull to like sacrifice his family, basically. So you naturally grow to dislike him because he's
Yeah.
not really allowed to be his own person, even though they kind of put that in there, like, oh, he was a friend of Iron Bull and he feels betrayed and stuff. But
Yeah.
he feels betrayed as a person of the Qun. Whereas here you
Yeah.
feel more like, okay, he's still part of the Qun, but he's like,
Not
hey,
really
I
personally.
personally appreciate
Yeah.
that you
Mhm.
saved my people, and I'm going to like see if we can help each other out. I mean, he
Yeah.
just has more personality here, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not as robust as making a choice at the end of it, or making you feel somewhat different to what choice you could make against the Chargers. Whereas in this, he's
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
more nuanced, more fleshed out.
That's why I'm kind of hoping they show, if he does show up in Veilguard, that it's like we see some character growth has happened in the intervening years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully, I think most of us saved the Chargers, so maybe Bull becoming Talbashov has had an impact on him, maybe, that he's like, oh, damn, what? I didn't expect that. Who knows?
I wonder if that'll be mentioned.
I don't know.
Like if you didn't romance Bull, like it, and he still became Talbashov, is there a choice for that? Or because like if he's dead, how would they?
Well,
They
he's
have to
dead.
very vaguely mention it. If you did go with the Qunari, then he would be dead.
Maybe
Mhm.
Gat would reference it if he is dead. Or like if you're talking to some of the Ben
Yeah.
Hassrath, maybe they might mention his passing if you sided with the Qunari.
Yeah.
But you'd have to have a choice for that in that case.
You would. You would.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be like
Yeah.
something very vague that could be interpreted as it's about Iron Bull or it's about somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose they could say Iron Bull is dead to us because he's Talbashop.
It could also be literally, you know, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The caster in the chat said, where was it? John Epler, was he okay when he wrote this? Lots of packages, pork, thruming, growing, rhythmic pulsing. Yeah, lots of receding as well, and gingerly. Yeah. No, I enjoyed this one a lot. I like the perspective. I like the Vadis and Rain, or however you say her name on the board.
I laughed a lot. I had to stay muted like most of the time because I just kept laughing at like everything. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah,
So
I
funny.
broke my demeanor many times over this one. Chat was peak. Yeah.
It was entertaining.
It was. No, it was good fun. It was good fun.
Yeah, pirates have returned.
I
mean,
love their
yeah.
dynamic too.
Yeah, the romance elements too.
It's cute.
Yeah, it is.
It's like
It's happy.
the one thing she never regrets in her life is like leaving her family for the love of her life. It's just like, oh,
Yeah.
and she's just like, it's the one thing she'll never regret. And the one thing she like is determined like that was the right thing.
And
Yeah.
that's so cute. And then they keep like
So
teasing each other throughout. It's just that's great. I love
Yeah.
No, it's cute.
I love how Erin's
I,
like her savior every time she gets in a pickle.
Yeah, yeah.
Whips out her badass ninja skills.
Yeah, she's a
Ah,
freaking
yeah.
badass.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, she
Just
knows.
Elven Catwoman.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
really cool.
Elven Catwoman is spot on. Oh my goodness, yeah.
That's great. I really hope that we meet those two or like other people of like Ferric's network somewhere in
too.
Veilguard. Just to be like, hey, there's
Yeah.
other people who have been, you know, fucked over or otherwise come in contact with the Dread Wolf and are now all like working together.
I
This is
have to see
cool.
cameos of everybody in the Tevinter Nights.
Me
I have
too.
to. There has to be.
There has to be.
I will be so sad.
Just NPCs in the world. We've seen a bit of Hoosberg, and there are loads of NPCs that you can talk to and just hang out with and do quests for. Let's have like a bunch of those be Tevinter Nights characters, please, because
Or like
Yeah.
even just like
Yeah.
mentions in codex entries or something where you're like, I know that name. It's so
exactly,
exciting.
yeah. And if we are going to Ravane, are we going to go to Kontar? Who knows? But we're going.
I
to
would
Ravane.
hope.
We know. If anybody does know where we're going, please don't spoil it. But yeah, we're going to some parts of Ravane. I don't know where, but could we hear
We
about that?
really
Yeah,
Any
they-
codices
They
about
have not
it?
said yet.
No,
I'm
no.
so excited
So-
for
I
all
also
the new
feel like
locations.
they've described a bunch of really interesting places in Tevinter Nights.
Oh,
Like
for sure.
specifically like the bar, but also like the garden in I think it was also in Manrassus. Like the spooky story with like the monster.
Oh, look in the gardens.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
And there's so many times when I've wondered like, is this being described so clearly because they're just, you know, good writers, or is it specifically because they know the place because they've built it out to be in the Veilguard?
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? It's true, especially if it is in
I'm
a
gonna
massive-
try to find every location in like these stories. That garden, the fountain. I'm gonna try to find
Yeah.
the destroyed fountain.
Yeah.
I want to find everything.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
You
The
can.
fountain better be broken.
Yeah.
It better be broken.
I like to have the picture to go with the locations and the people and
I'm gonna have a checklist of everything like you could possibly run into that could connect the Tevinter Nights and be like, we didn't get to see this
Oh my
person.
god, we
We
should
didn't
get
get
to
see
bingo cards.
We need to create a
Yes,
bingo. Oh, we
bingo
need
card.
bingo.
Yes.
Oh, Tevinter Nights
Yeah.
bingo cards. Yes.
Oh yeah, we gotta make
That.
this.
We need to do that. That would be a brilliant idea. No, that's a brilliant idea. What was I going to? Sorry, 15 days until the Veilguard. Yes, we will find out if they will be in
Yeah.
the game in 15 days. It's literally a matter of time.
That's insane. I still cannot believe it. It's still so unreal.
yeah.
What I loved most about this story was how it set up Fenrir's scheme, because we all assume, well, we all presumptuously assumed based on Trespasser that Solas did not care as much about kind of creating squabbles with the world and just focusing on his ritual. And then we know he didn't like the Qunari and did not want the Inquisitor to die by the hands of the Qunari. But now with this story, his age, and so he wasn't personally involved in anything besides that one particular thing. But in this one, his agent is directly involved in starting a massive coup between Tevinter and the Qunari, and then also involving Ravane. And it's like, what happened to that kind of more disciplined Solas who was just focusing on his ritual and going to kill off Thedas or destroy the Veil in his own way, with his own ritual, to now actually having his agents stir up mayhem between Tevinter, Qunari, and Ravane? Was that agent just going off against their own whims, or was that a planned thing based on Fenrir? Like, that's what
She said I act freely, which implies that she's doing this completely on her own, not sanctioned by the Dreadwolf, but it's like, I'm doing it for my god, and all that creepy, cultist, extremist stuff.
Though he is kind of a trickster guy, he's setting some of this up as distractions so that there's wrapped up in the squabbles he sets up rather than focusing on him.
That's a brilliant...
that could be too.
That happened in the Missing as well, didn't it? In the Missing, it was like, Varric, you will... I know because you're a good-natured person, you will focus on saving the slaves rather than chasing me, because I know you'll do that because you're a good person. And it's exactly what Varric did. Yeah, so it's diverting the attention away. So then what the heck is Solas doing during that? That's what I want to know.
It does make me think of that banter between Solas and Sarah when he's talking about when you have like a rebel group, you break them up into separate cells so they all do their own thing. And if you catch one, you can't actually do anything to the other because they won't have the information. So I think it's probably a situation like that where she's doing her own thing and Solas is doing her own thing. And...
Yeah. No, I think something else that popped into my mind is, in the next story, Dreadwolf Take You, it is only the Qunari spies, i.e. the Ben Hassereth, and Tevinter spies who don't attend that meeting, and they are said to be some of the best, like, well-informed intelligence groups of those countries, and they don't involve themselves in that meeting, so Solas isn't informed on what their current movements are, because they don't share their knowledge, and so because of that, is he trying to divert their attention because they are so powerful, or they're so well-known? I think the Ben Hassereth know the most about Solas because they've been chasing him for so long, but they are one of the most well-informed groups. So I is that another element to it too, where he's like, they're not going to share their information willingly, so you know what, it's get in the midst of that and cause something. I don't know. It definitely relates to that. No,
Maybe.
Because in this
it
story,
leaves a lot of questions.
Yeah, Gath says that they had the information from one of their own who said that it was important to Fenrirel, and then before they could interrogate them, they killed themselves.
Yes.
So then the Ben Hassereth are probably also, to some extent, compromised, right? If there's spies from Solas in their...
It would make sense.
How many elves joined the Qun,
And didn't Solas and Trespasser say, my spies tripped over the Qunari spies, tripped over your spies?
All the spies.
Was tripped over your spies and their spies. Yeah. It would be safe to assume that. I mean, even the Qunari that were in this story were elves. The 6 that were defeated were elven Qunari. It's like,
I think that's also because they're in Ravane, so there's just gonna be a lot of Ravane people who just have converted, unless, like, actual Qunari as in the race.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
But
I wouldn't be surprised if, because of this whole thing that got way out of hand, if the Ben Hassereth decided we're gonna like pull back because we don't know if we can trust our own people, much less the Inquisition and whoever else.
Kind of try to like regain what their lost control, essentially.
Yeah.
That's a good thought.
Yeah, for sure. No.
Maybe.
Well, that's definitely what excited me most about the story, was actually like, oh, okay, so Solas has changed to some degree in the years since Trespasser. And the fact that he's got this, I called it the cult of Fenrirel because that's what Arain said. Some cult or whatever. So I'm like, okay, I've just kind of nicknamed it the cult of Fenrirel. But these Fenrirel agents that a lot of elves are now, understandably, have joined up with him since. And they are now acting freely on his behalf. Now I wonder, with the twist in the Veilguard, with Solas being on our side reluctantly, are we going to be able to kind of have some dominion over his agents? Are they going to help us out even a little bit? I reckon to some extent, potentially. I don't see why not. If Solas needs our help, or we need Solas's help, and Solas is going to help us get through the narrative to defeat the Elven Gods, it would be helpful if we had his own personal little army of agents, or his own network. We're using his Alluvians. We're using his own little pad. Surely he's going to help us with his own army. I know we're going to be building up the Veilguard. We're going to be going, I assume, again, all speculation, we're going to be going around the factions of Thedas. Can we also have like a few elven agents in that group too?
That would be really
I would assume so. Like, oh, our god is helping you for now, so we'll reluctantly lend you our aid until he says otherwise.
Yeah.
Or maybe they just don't believe you, that you have, Solus in your head talking to you, and they might not.
But if you've got his dagger, though, it's like, how did you get a dagger?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, fair dues.
I mean, it
I'm
might
wondering
make
if we're
them
going to get
hostile.
answers then.
It might make
Are we
them
gonna-
hostile if Solus suddenly disappeared. You have his dagger. We can't get in contact with
Yeah,
him.
that is true. Yeah. How did you get that?
Like-
Yeah, that is a good point.
Well, and I wonder if we're going to get answers about Thalasson.
Yeah, that was what I was leading
They
up
said
to as well.
Thalasson.
That's what I was leading up to as well. Was if we could have Fenrirel agents, could we get Thalasson back, please?
Yeah.
I was also thinking, what if it's like Briala? What if it's like Meryl?
Meryl! Yes! Yes!
Oh, wow.
Oh, cool.
I want
Yeah.
Meryl to come back because I felt like she was always kind of like the weaker out of the companions in Dragon Age 2, like interesting wise. So I want her to make a comeback and be like this really interesting, badass, like Fenrirel agent or something, just to like redeem, because she didn't get that redemption arc in the canceled DLC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well, and
what I
also,
want.
it's like,
Yeah.
I know Eve Miles would come back
Oh,
if
she
they
would.
asked her to,
She
because
would.
I actually met her when she was here in Houston at a con
yeah?
several years ago, and I talked with her,
Yeah.
and she had never done a video game before, and she absolutely loved it, and she said that she would
Aw.
come back in a heartbeat.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, that is so cool.
I would love it.
Oh. Me too. I would freaking love that. And
Yeah.
Like,
She did such a good job.
she did. I know, like, the
She
whole
really did.
choices thing is really annoying. Are there any key choices that affect Meryl that mean BioWare can kind of codify a way that she can return without our choices being so heavily dependent? I know, you've got the Alluvian, really, the fate of the Alluvian. Besides that,
Well, whether or not she romanced Hawk, probably.
yeah, but they
I
could
feel
also
like,
kind of just push that in a way a bit and be like, if that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And
I think
if
they
you didn't
could manage
develop
it.
a friendship or rivalry with her, and if you side with the Templars at the end,
Yeah.
she can end up turning on Hawk. But I don't think that happens necessarily with a lot of players.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So there is a way where she could potentially be, well, does she get killed in that scenario if she turns on Hawk?
Yeah,
Yeah,
supposedly.
if her friendship isn't high enough and you side with the Templars, she could die in the final battle with Orsino and Meredith.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
they could also make it where, like, she was wounded, you thought she was dead, and she
Yeah, like
and
Liliana.
she used
Liliana.
blood magic
Yeah,
to get away.
Liliana.
Like Liliana.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
And Corythius.
Yeah. And everybody. No. But yeah, like, yeah. Because I would love to see Meryl back. I think she's a character that
Well,
would
makes
be
so much
ripe.
sense too.
Like, she
Like with
introduced
the whole
the
thing
tale
with
of
Chris
Fenrirel.
Luvian and
Yeah.
it's like it's been linking back to the very first game,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
the DLC with Morgan, and Morgan's been reappearing, and it's just like
It'll be great.
it can't end there,
Yeah.
right?
No, it'll be great. It'll be great.
I think it could be interesting to see her have to reconcile, like she was the first to the Keeper, so she knows all the lore of Fen'Harel and the gods, and having to see her take what she knows and compare it to now the gods are here and they're evil and they're trying to kill us.
Yeah.
Like that would be
I
quite
would
a lot.
love to see how she would like feel about all that. Because we hear like in Bilar's voice in like the one trailer, she's like,
That's what I was
"Our
thinking.
gods are
Yeah.
back." Like she was
Mhm.
distraught. I want to see how like this would turn Meryl's like whole world around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, she lost the Keeper to like trying to get the mirror working again.
To get that lost knowledge, and when she finally has all the answers she seeks, it's nothing she was looking for and all the glory, and she's just like, my whole being is not what I was hoping.
Yeah.
Just
My whole life was a lie, kind of a thing.
Yes.
Basically, yeah. Yeah.
The betrayal.
Fen'Harel actually isn't, you know.
But yeah, on the other hand, maybe she's because she was doing so great with the Illuvian and stuff, maybe Solus reached out to her and she's like, holy shit, that's Fen'Harel. He's not what I thought, but it's so much better than I thought because he's not evil.
That
and
would
I
be
can help
so
him.
Cool.
Like, she would, right?
Yeah.
That would be amazing because she would be like a good person to help with the Illuvians.
Oh, for sure.
That's just how I imagine it would go, and good for her. She deserves
She
to be
does deserve
recognized
it.
by her
She
god.
does. No, she does. She does.
She deserves happiness.
She deserves everything, and that's one of the things that I'm really sad because going up to Veilguard, I was like, will my hawk be romancing Fenris or Meryl? And then I had this whole idea of like, wow, if my hawk is romancing Meryl and gets left behind in the Fade and Inquisition, then Meryl will have even more reason to go like use the Illuvian to get to the Fade and everything to join Solus and get to Hawk.
Yeah.
I had this whole idea, and well, now I'm thinking it's probably not really gonna happen, but it was still such a great idea.
But it could. It could happen.
It could have happened. She could have just said it and off the script, to him, and he's like, "Oh, no, he's fucked, man. Sorry." And she's just moved on.
Yeah. She's like, "Oh well, too bad." Tried for 10 years to get Tamlin back, and then the love of her life. She's just like, well.
No, I guess not.
In the chat, DeCaster said about the Qunari. No, Villainous Kitty said. No, about Solas. Solas saying about the Qun. They're eating the dogs, the Qun, they're eating the pets.
Oh my god.
No!
They're eating the pets in Krontar.
Yeah. No!
The puppies!
Not the puppies. Speaking of which, there are cats in the Veilguard that you can pet.
And we can pet them.
Can I pet them? Please let me pet them.
I read somewhere that you can pet them. I don't remember where, but that was very important news to me, so I remembered.
It's the most important news.
That.
It's the
Yes.
most,
So great.
It's yes, you can pet them.
Get them here. I can pet animals.
We'll just pet
Well,
every
it's
single cat
Up
we
there
meet.
with, the
Petting.
rock, paper, scissors with Manfred.
Oh yes,
Hugging a son.
Yes.
hugging a son. And are there dogs though?
I
know.
wish there
I
were
think
dogs.
so.
I want a dog.
Felis Catus in the Veilguard? Yes.
Alson might kind of be a dog.
I feel like there
He
could be
might
dogs.
act like a dog. Play fetch and stuff.
Oh.
I mean, my
think
cat plays that.
take on the status of the owl bear in Baldur's Gate 3, the baby owl bear.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will protect it with my life.
He's so precious.
Yeah.
I want to see a Mabari. There has to be a Mabari in every game.
I'd like one.
I hope
I'd
so.
just for old time's sake. I'd be
Yes.
like,
Like, I don't even have to have it. I just want to see it.
Exactly, yeah. Even if it's
Just like
charging at
single
me
on the
to
bar in the
bite
background.
my rook, I'm like, that's fine. That's fine.
It's like when Cullen got a Mabari. I'm like, yay, there's a
Yeah.
Mabari in Inquisition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they don't have one right now, I would like BioWare to make a DLC about pets.
That'd be
Yes.
so
Yes. Yes.
Please.
I don't know what it would be about. I don't know what it would involve, but there would be a Mabari.
Just your rook going out and picking a pet for a new pet.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
the-
there's
like-
so many cute animals in Thedas. Of course, there's dogs and cats, but then there's griffins and there's fennecs and nugs and
Yeah.
I want a dragon.
bronzos even.
Yeah.
There's just so many cool animals. I want
You're my friend now. Come back to the lighthouse.
And if we play an elf rook, I really want to holla.
That would be brilliant.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Imagine if you got like a faction-based pet,
Oh, yeah,
like
exactly.
a skeleton for the Morn Watch or something.
Oh, you get like an undead dog, like that
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
That show,
That would be so
that
cool.
kid show. What's it called? The kid show. Or like the dog off Nightmare Before Christmas. What's the dog
Oh,
called?
yes. Zero.
That's it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Shadow Dragon, cat, clinical, Tevinter, and then
Or
Grey
a
Warden.
snake. because
Or a
Tevinter's
snake. Oh, yeah,
snake.
no, yeah, snake. Yeah, snake. And then Grey Warden, Griffin.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And Teven Crow. Oh, I wonder.
Yeah.
And then Lord of Fortune. What would that like?
That could be
Maybe
a cat.
Something exotic.
Because
Or
cats
a
like.
parrot. A
Or
type
like
of parrot.
Or a reptile, like a lizard.
Oh, that'd be also really cool.
And then what's the other faction? I always forget one. Oh, Veil Jumper. What's in the
I feel like you should get a fox
Hala.
or a wolf
Or a wolf.
or a hollow.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We're creating
Something
DLCs
more
here.
wild.
That's what we need. This is the DLC we need.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't even have to bring them along with like fighting or anything. They'll just
No.
like there's a little room in
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
lighthouse where it's like the pet
Yes.
room.
Yeah.
And it's all the pets you collect.
Honestly,
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
fun. And then it could just be like the Hearthfire
Yeah.
DLC in Skyrim. Just like
Yeah.
you can build an
Yeah.
extra area in the lighthouse and you can decorate it however you like and you can
Yeah.
adopt any pet that you want and just put them in there.
That'd be
That's
brilliant.
it.
That's all
I
we
will
need. That's
Collect all the pets.
Honestly,
Yeah.
EA likes their DLC so much. You know, this is a real easy one, and people
Yeah.
will have fun. I'm just saying.
The fans would
Right.
the fans demand it.
Hey, the fans are helping you guys out for DLC.
Yeah, it's true.
We know what we want.
We do. We do.
Make it happen.
Any other thoughts on half up front, folks?
One, I really like we hear a lot about how, Tevinter is the magic capital and magic is everywhere, and I like that we kind of really got that at the beginning of the story. Like the magic self-playing piano, the magic self-serving bar. Like I want to see
Yeah.
stuff like that in Tevinter.
Yeah. Yeah, like the vending
Definitely.
machine bar thing where you just pay the particular
I would love
coppers.
that.
And because the amount you pay knows what you want, because all
So
of the
cool.
drinks must cost differently, is cool.
Yeah.
I also really like the detail with the blood. It was somewhere very in the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh,
when-
when she cut her finger?
yeah. It's just the small thing of like, oh, I can't give someone else something with my blood on it.
Yeah.
Duh.
Yeah.
It shows so much of like the world building.
It does.
I really like that.
Yeah.
How
And
conscious.
how it
that
came
could
back
be.
to the Kunari note.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thing comes back to the note. There's like a tiny bit of blood, and there's just enough to figure out where they are.
Yeah.
Such good.
That's actually
Uh-huh.
such a tiny small detail that means so much. Yeah. No, that is brilliant. John Appler has done a beautiful type of characterization in this of the world, of the plot points of Tevinter, as we said, of the magic element of it. It is brilliant, and even the description of Kontar, where it talked about
Yeah,
the
that
conversion
too.
of the Qun as well, was brilliantly done. Where it told you so
Yeah.
much in like a paragraph of text. It was beautifully
I
done.
loved it, and it was not boring to read. It wasn't like a I don't know what the word is, but there's a word for it if you just have like boring description. But it was like in character, being like, oh yeah, I like this and I like that, but that I didn't like that.
Yeah.
was-
Yeah.
It was
Mm.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, really well.
He's a
written.
good writer.
He really is. He really is.
I wonder if we'll get to try a hand at the whatever heist that Dorian sent Badis on, and she never
Yeah.
ended up completing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
what
want
happened
that
there?
info.
Yeah.
Want to know what it was, and I want to know if I can go steal it.
Yes.
That would be great.
It does sound like by the ending of this that they're going to be in the next game.
have
teasing to
be.
Varric being so crucial of the start of this game.
And he
It's-
is in Veilguard
and
in
they're
the beginning, at
building
least
the
for
Veilguard.
sure.
Yeah, it's it sounds like they're literally gonna be in like in the Veilguard as in the group, but like obviously they're not. But it's like, yeah, go meet Varric. Fenrir knows you. Clearly, you need to stop him in some capacity. And I like when the story came out, I was like, oh, clearly Varys and Irain, in some capacity, are going to be companions in the next game, or somewhat integral to the plot, because they're literally Fenrir knows them, and they have got no choice, or they're on the run for the rest of their lives. So it's like, okay, so they must at least pop up in the game once or twice.
Yeah, I think there's like NPCs or quest
Yeah,
givers
yeah.
as like examples of like for 10 years, Solus has been doing a bunch of stuff, and a lot of people have somehow gotten involved, and they all kind of need protection or wanted to just, take
Yeah.
a stab back at him
Yeah,
in revenge.
yeah.
Just love that.
I'm just now realizing like how many times like Dorian has been brought up in this entire book in Tevinter Nights. He was in one of the stories. He's always been like mentioned in a couple of the other stories. I'm just like, he's gotta be in the game. We have to see him.
We do, and he's in the
Exactly
comics as
what
well.
I've been hoping for.
He's in like
Yes!
3 of the comics. Like, bro has got to be in the Veilguard. Has got to be.
I love Dorian. He was my best friend.
He's not in the game. I
And we
think
we
many
better
people
see
are right.
May.
Yes. Oh my god.
And meanwhile, chat is going feral over Solas, Rook, Llewellyn, Thruple.
Oh.
Did everybody?
me.
Did everybody like my little Kermit impression that turned into Elmo?
I
Yes.
laughed so hard. You cannot believe.
I don't even know how I did that voice, to be honest.
You are a wizard.
Yep.
You're a wizard, Jack.
Oh, it was so hard to keep a straight face for like my next lines because I had some lines right after, and I was just like pulling my mouth
yeah.
out
You
of
were
laughing.
so good, LB. So great.
No, it was fantastic. It was fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Everybody did so well.
I'm a what? You're a frog, Harry. No.
All the frogs.
I'm just seeing the frog emojis. Yeah, chat did crack me up too many times. I'm like trying to keep my composure, and I'm like, just see a little frog emoji. I'm like, and next week is going to be hard to keep composure because it is the final story of Rook Club.
Oh my goodness.
The Dread will take you, and I will show you folks what I have bought. Everybody watching.
Yes.
I have a wig for a particular character that I will be taking ownership over, and I've been practicing my French accent, and we are going to be in for a hell of a time. If you thought Kermit, or what did I? No, I didn't do Kermit. I did Elmo instead. Apparently, you thought that was fun. Next week is going to be brilliant. Yeah, it's going to be Dread will take you, the quintessential story of Tevinter Nights that everybody flipping loves. And what we're going to be doing, chat, that I can show you is everybody who I have is going to be reading the paragraphs of the tale themselves. So there'll be less narration from me and more me playing a character as well. But it's going to be more like fully just based on the voice acting of this one.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Because they're telling a story, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's
They're
like,
telling
Oh,
their
it's so
version.
it's not about
Awesome.
me. Yeah, it's not about me being like, okay, yeah, it's the assassin's tale, because it's literally written in their dialogue anyway. It's just all expositional dialogue, so there's no point me being like that because it suits those characters. So that will be freaking amazing, and then I will see what we'll do in the future about Rook Club. But we're 15 days away from Dragon Age. Next week, after that episode of Rook Club, we are 8 days away. Like, we can discuss the fate of that in the future. But yeah, it will be so fun. And yeah, I'm going to be putting the rest of the available options for next week in the Discord server. But just so everybody's aware who is listening to this, there are little roles left. I've already got the bulk of the cast sorted. I'm going to randomize a few that aren't sorted just so I can make it as fair as possible. But it's hard. But there are a few NPC roles that people can do if they want to. But they are small roles. But yeah, that'll be so fun. Yeah, that'll be next week. And that is the last episode for Rook Club until we get the Veilguard.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
Kind of sad that it's gonna be over.
I know, that's the thing. Like, it's like, oh.
You're gonna have to come up with a plan for what to read next.
I know. I know. It's in the back of my mind to start it up again in the new year. There'll be
There's a
something.
million.
After, you know, some plenty of time of playing Veilguard.
No.
Give your time.
There's got to be something. There'll be something. We have to do something. Like as
Yes, we
and
love this.
as eponymous as the story as well. Like the tea house is where I got the name for the Discord server, and that is where Dreadwolf Take You comes from as well. And then to have people from the tea house reading the books as well is very full circle. No, I love it.
So poetic.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it just? But we will call this one then, because next week is going to be the last one. And then, yeah, so I want to say a massive thank you to all of my beautiful guests today. From Nooble, we'll go around. Nooble, thank you. To LB, to Fairy, to Songbird, and to Tiny. Really, really appreciate you all volunteering and offering your absolutely resplendent voices for Half Up Front. Read your novel, Jack. Villainous Kitty. Yeah. That's a good idea. It's a good idea.
We're all up for it.
Yeah.
We're down.
It's a good idea. No, I know. But thank you, everybody. Everybody, please give a round of applause to my wonderful guests. Let me see those clapping hands emojis in the chat. I already see them. Yeah. Massive thank you to everybody. Again, I'll put the next one in the Discord server for those who are in and would like to do maybe a smaller NPC role. But yeah, join us next week for the best story in Tevinter Nights as we wrap up Rook Club. But until then, we will see you all later on. Thank you so much, everybody. Goodbye.
Tiny also says bye.
Tiny also says bye.
Yeah, Tiny says bye.